Mm-mm-mm. You guys hear me? You guys hear me? You guys hear me? Good. Okay. Right now it is 14:36 in Japan. So we have about 45 minutes until it starts. I'm doing well. How are you? I think for now we'll just chill a little bit. For the first time ever, I'm actually kind of live early, so I can take some time to talk to you guys a bit, which is something that I have been wanting to do a bit more since it seems like the games just go really, really fast. Thank you, sir. Chilean, Finland, it's very nice. Hi guys. Yeah, forgot to charge my proper camera, so right now I'm on a webcam, but it seems like it should work. Hopefully. What do I think? If you guys have questions, right now I'm just kind of chilling. So if you have any questions, let me know. Top three decks of OP12 right now, I think, is Blue Purple Luffy by far, maybe by a larger margin than in OP11. Then, then it gets tricky. um, there's a lot of decent decks, but I think a lot of it comes down to the rest of the meta. It feels like Red Rayleigh, Green Zoro, and Green Purple Luffy are all strong decks, and whichever one is actually stronger is kind of just deck roulette on the day. See which ones you end up hitting. I'm personally a bit of a Green Zoro hater, so I don't think that that deck's. I mean, it's strong, but I feel like it's more easily exploited because the paths that it can take are very linear. Green Zoro's not as bad as people think that he is, just because he loses to Blue Purple Luffy. I think that if Blue Purple Luffy as a deck didn't exist, then that deck would be a lot more annoying to deal with. I could, while we have some free time, I could do a tier list since I think we did one tier list at the start of OP12, and now that we have the start decks, I can finally make an educated opinion on the rest of that. Um, Rayleigh's been doing well. Yeah, I thought that Rayleigh would fall off with Buggy, but Buggy's been gated a lot by Green Zoro. So Buggy, like the start deck leaders are all pretty decent. Buggy seems to be the strongest of them so far, but um, still not as powerful as it may be in the West, just due to the fact that Green Zoro does very well into him. Yeah, no, Green. I mean, Green Zoro's a cool deck. So yeah, even though I don't enjoy playing the deck, I think no hate to anyone who would want to play it. If there was no Luffy leaders, that'd be pretty difficult since that's like the core of the meta. Um, Green Zoro would come to mind, but I can't think of any other leaders right now that are like currently gated by purple Luffys in the meta. A hard question. Mm, No Luffy leaders. I need to see what leaders there are. Um, Leader cards. No Luffy leaders also means that there aren't really 6,000 power leaders, which is pretty significant unless you consider Whitebeard, but he hasn't been in the meta for a while. So that means that leaders that are good into 5,000 power leaders would be better, which would be things like Red Zoro, perhaps, low to ground aggro. Algara would also be very solid, although he's not bad in the current meta. Blue Yellow Nami actually would be very good, I think. Blue Yellow Nami would probably be pretty high tier. Maybe Blue Purple Sanji just as a budget Blue Purple Luffy, but that feels like it's kind of dodging the question. Green Purple Luffy against Purple Luffy. I'm not very well versed in that matchup, but oh, message just disappeared. Yeah, I'm not super well versed in that matchup. I think that Purple Luffy's just trying to push you over really quickly, so as long as you can survive to a certain point, then you should be able to push them over. But I mean, Green Purple Luffy has a bit of a different dynamic as well for the game. Uh, let's go over here. Is this... Was this a deck builder? Hold on. Tier list maker. Okay. Should be fine for now. Red, yellow, Sable. Sorry, I have no idea. I've never played that leader before. Let me just pull a couple of leaders into here that have at some point been somewhat relevant. Call this the pool. Actually, hold on. And this is the pool that we'll be looking at. Non-Fishman Oshinante is surprisingly good because it's very good into Green Zoro. Let me get some leaders in here that seem kind of meta relevant. Sorry if I skip over a leader that you want me to talk about, but I'm trying to pull in the leaders that I can actually comment on. I've seen somewhat in this meta. This may not be enough tiers now that I'm thinking about it. I move around the tiers in this tool. I'm not sure actually. Well, worst comes to worst, we can repurpose the current discussion tier. How far did we go? NL. Yamato, I don't know enough about to really comment on her. Reiji as well. There's like Reiji and Yamato, I think, are decks that have potential, but I just haven't played or seen them enough to actually be able to comment on them. Foxy, I think, could be decent, but haven't been able to test that either. Harugara, yeah. Agi to Luffy to Peach ga to to blue yellow. Honestly, most of the OP12 leaders are somewhat strong. Purple Yellow Roshinante. Oh, I haven't put out the video. I recorded a video for that. I haven't put that out. But the deck's not bad. I just haven't played it enough to actually be able to compare it to the rest of the meta. Mm, I'll put I'll put them in just because they're new leaders, but I might be a bit wrong in my analysis on them. Red, purple, blue. Well, that's probably all that I can really comment on. The rest of these leaders, like, you do see black yellow sometimes, you do see red Nika sometimes, but I haven't seen them really enough to actually comment on them. Okay. Yeah, I skipped over Shanks. I can put him in if you want, but he's not doing great right now. Okay. I guess before we get started, I'll just go last question that I saw. Um, Blue Purple Luffy versus Green Zoro is Blue Purple Luffy favored. I don't know which side you really want to know more about, but Blue Purple Luffy side, you just want to turtle as hard as possible. Just try to survive as best as you can. Counter all of the lower power attacks that are 7,000 or less. Try to stay healthy until you can stabilize with Nine Mom, and eventually you can push them over. The Green Zoro side, you want to prevent that from happening, so you want to use the 3-cost event that restands your leader and just keep hitting leader as much as you can, basically. There's no PRB02 leader, but I think we're probably going to get OP13 stuff today. Should be exciting. Okay. Oh, yeah, Lucci's missing. Yeah. I'll Yeah, Lucci's important. The games start in about 30 minutes unless they've announced Green Yellow wasn't there. Unless they announced that it would be at a different time. But no, it seems like it will be starting in about 30 minutes-ish. So until then, let's talk about this a little bit. Maybe a little bit quickly, since I'm not sure if we could actually get through all of this in 30 minutes. I'll push chat a little bit to the side so I don't get too distracted, but I'll look at it every now and then to make sure I'm not missing something. Um, I guess for now I'll just go in order. So Red Zoro was a deck that, at the very start of the meta, was the first deck to win in OP12, and that caught a lot of people by surprise because people were kind of expecting the premier aggro decks to be Red Rayleigh, and then maybe to an extent Green Purple if you consider him an aggro deck. But Red Zoro came out of nowhere as a counter to a lot of these aggro decks, just anti-aggro aggro, because he has a lot of aggressive tools, but has a lot of resources. But since then, still has not really found his place in the meta, just due to the fact that Red Rayleigh, with the list kind of stabilizing, with people getting much better at the deck, because it is kind of a complicated deck, has fallen off a little bit. Generally, if you do want to be playing Red Zoro, Red Rayleigh does seem to be, you know, Zoro is Red Rayleigh at home. Red Rayleigh is kind of the guy that she tells you not to worry about. So I think that Zoro, not a bad deck, but just in the context of the meta and how it compares to the rest of the decks, does tend to struggle a little bit more. So despite the fact that it did win the first championship, I do think that it's pretty comfortably in the C tier. Not to say that the deck's bad, but just because we have to kind of consider that there is going to be one deck that's just guaranteed to be kind of in a tier of its own. Okay, I should put Bunny in there. Um, and I guess just segueing that into Blue Purple Luffy. Blue Purple Luffy as a deck, though in the West, a lot of people are debating, is it better than Green Purple Luffy? What's actually the best deck? In OP12, the addition of mainly Red Rayleigh and Green Zoro into the meta have solidified Blue Purple Luffy at the top. Red Rayleigh and Green Zoro are both decks that have reasonable matchups, not necessarily hard winning or hard losing into Green Purple Luffy, but can fight quite well into Green Purple Luffy, whereas both of these decks do tend to struggle a bit into Blue Purple Luffy. Red Rayleigh does have a better matchup into Blue Purple Luffy. I think that he wins about 50-50 to maybe slightly losing, depending on who takes first or second. But Blue Purple Luffy just having a generally solid matchup into basically all of the OP12 leaders across the board makes it so that, oh, maybe aside from Blue Purple Senji, which is why we saw a little bit of him a little while back, makes it so that Blue Purple Luffy not only lost one of his bad matchups in Red Yellow Betty, because Red Yellow Betty does oh my god, I'm tripping over all of my words. Red Yellow Betty struggles into these new OP12 leaders, so she's kind of fallen off in the meta. And because she's gone and all of these decks that Blue Purple Luffy has a decent matchup into have kind of taken uh, her space, Blue Purple Luffy feels like he's in a much stronger spot because he doesn't have any more like auto lose matchups like he did back in OP11. And I guess we just talked a bit about OP12. We just talked about Bella Betty, but I do think that no, Bella Betty maybe makes more sense in the context of some of the OP12 leaders once they come onto the board. So let's talk about one of these. Red Rayleigh is one that a lot of people do enjoy, very excited for. I think that Red Rayleigh has basically everything that the old Red Zoro, the version that doesn't run animals, wanted in the past. This version of the deck is very solid. It has lots of defense because it has so many different events in the deck, which usually are a liability, but for Red Rayleigh, because they're also 2k counters for him, just become really, really powerful. I think that it's these events, particularly Conqueror's Haki, which gives your leader or your Rayleigh or characters plus 2000 and then give the entire enemy board, including the opponent's leader, minus 1000 power, makes it so that Red Rayleigh is really, really tanky, making him very good into a lot of different aggro decks that want to push him over, while also being very aggressive himself, thanks to his leader ability, thanks to the 4-cost Luffy that can summon a 3-cost. He has lots of really efficient ways of cheating Dong and cheating value, which makes him very powerful. So that's the reason why this Zoro is lower here. It's because Red Rayleigh is just it, him, but better. I'm in Hoodie. I see you here. Um, and where do we segue this into next? Take a brief look at chat. Okay, I saw someone say black purple, so I'll just go into that. I don't. There he is. Black Purple Luffy, I think, is another one of these. I guess we just ended up tackling all of the aggro decks early on. But Black Purple Luffy is another deck that has to be compared to Red Rayleigh. However, Black Purple Luffy does have the benefit of being able to use the 6-cost Luffy, making the leader 7000 power. So that in tandem with the fact that the leader being 7000, the character being 7000 power, as well as all of the other characters, also have the 6-cost Robin that you can play in the deck now. Makes it so it's very, very tanky, very aggressive. I think the deck is solid. The one issue though is that Rayleigh does, and also I guess any red control deck, including Red Green Smoker, Red Zoro, not red controls, just red decks in general, run Mole Pistol. The KO is 7000 power or less, that the cost increase from Luffy's leader effect makes it a bit tricky to actually have that card stick onto the board. And without that card sticking onto the board, it does make the matchup a bit more tricky. I still think that maybe people are kind of underplaying Purple Black Luffy because the deck is solid. If the red opponents that you do really want to use that 7000 base power don't manage to draw their mole pistols, the deck just auto wins. If they find their mole pistols, then it's really up to Purple Black Luffy to find his second Luffy's. If he does, they're still fightable. All in all, the deck's not bad. It's just there are a lot of other decks in the meta, such as especially Green Zoro, which have been a bit tricky to deal with. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting him into B tier, but maybe this is a bit of a weak B tier, leaning on C. Kind of does depend on the meta a bit. Yeah. Well, and so I guess now we just segue into Green Zoro. Green Zoro is a very weird deck because Green Zoro obliterates decks that he's good against and gets hard destroyed by decks that he's not good against, which is kind of reminiscent of Teach at the start of OP09 when he didn't really have much support, when people weren't really figuring out how he was meant to be played. That issue has been kind of fixed for Teach at this point. Now he has a lot of tools to deal with a lot of different types of decks. But Green Zoro is a deck that does very good into basically anything that's B tier or lower, not including Zoro. Zoro is kind of an exception because it's just a very fast aggro deck. But generally, Green Zoro does very good into decks that have simple moves. By that I mean play one character per turn, try to develop value, and slowly push over the opponent's board. Zoro doesn't care about that. Zoro will hit your character and your leader at the same time, and very, very powerful, but not as powerful when, for example, your opponent is playing 2 things per turn through the um, 3-cost Chopper that plays another character, or you're playing 2 things per turn through the 4-cost Rayleigh, or not Rayleigh, the 4-cost Luffy that plays a 3-cost, or, of course, if you have a 9-cost that plays another 9-cost. So Green Zoro has a very, very good matchup into a lot of the decks that are down here, but he tends to struggle against some of the decks that actually are up here. And so for that reason, I think that he is still in the A tier because he's still a very powerful leader, just perhaps maybe not as powerful as, for example, Rayleigh, which I think has just a generally solid, aggressive plan that's pretty flexible, honestly, into a lot of different decks. Green Zoro, one of the reasons why I don't necessarily rate him too highly is because his game plan can be a little bit unflexible. if he doesn't get the perfect curve, I mean, he doesn't need perfect curve, but if he doesn't get his curve of the 5 cost Tashigi and the 8 cost Mihawk going, then it can feel like he's a bit behind. And having a deck that relies on 2 cards, granted they are very searchable in the deck, makes it so that you kind of wish you had more different ways to play in the events that you don't find those cards. Um, Anyways, let's just talk about Nami because it's the next on the list. Blue Nami also won a championship, and I think it's a bit of a miracle. I think that Blue Nami is one of those decks like it's not a deck, but 8 cost Kid in a way, where 8 cost Kid as a card is very good when people stop acknowledging its existence, when people forget that it's a card, and suddenly you get really hard punished because you overplayed your board, you overplayed into the opponent's hand, and now the opponent has 10 cards in hand and 8 cost Kid, and now you need to fight into an 8,000 power body with 3 blockers on the board. Those situations really, really suck to fight against for 8 cost Kid, and Blue Nami is kind of a similar thing where if you haven't seen Nami in a year, you're bound to mess up how to hit into it, and I think that Blue Nami is just one of those decks where every now and then it can randomly win just because people forget how you're supposed to play into it. I think that Green Zoro, I actually don't know. I think Green Zoro versus Blue Nami should win because Blue Nami has an interesting interaction. Let me pull up the card actually, because it might be, for people who don't know the interaction, a bit confusing. I think it's called Snake Dance. So Blue Nami already plays a card called Snake Dance, which returns one of your characters to your hand. This is just to get back Kaya into your hand. And not good? Okay. And the thing with Green Zoro's leader effect is that, so the way that it's worded is if this leader has battled your opponent's character during the turn, then you can set the character active on activate main. And if you bounce back the character that it's attacking, then you don't actually complete a battle. Therefore, the condition for Zoro's leader effect hasn't been met. So what Zoro would end up doing into Blue Namis, especially that they're unaware of, is they like rest Kaya. They think this is super free. I can kill their character and hit their leader. This is going to be game over. But they just bounce back their Kaya to their hand, and not only did they get back the Kaya, but also you can't use your leader effect and hit leader now, so you're much, much further behind. So actually, Blue Nami versus Green Zoro, I would imagine just thanks to that one card is Blue Nami favored, but I haven't actually tested that hard. The issue though is that Blue Nami struggles against Red Rayleigh and Blue Purple Luffy depending on the number of forecast puddings that they run. So I still think that the deck is kind of mid despite the fact that it did win a championship. I do think that there's a lot of people just being caught off guard. I feel bad putting 2 championship winners in C tier, but I don't see a world where a proper Blue Purple Luffy player or people who've tested the matchup in any capacity would lose that matchup. The deck's not bad. Um, the deck's not bad, but yeah, for now I'll leave it here. Maybe as we get more things on here, we'll fill it up a bit more. Yeah. Um, Blue Purple Luffy versus Nami. Generally, okay. Actually, I didn't mention this in my guide. I do have a Metafy guide. If if you guys want to check that out at some point, I think it's in the description as well. But um, this matchup, basically, what you have to do as Blue Purple Luffy is just never attack. Wait until you have like 3 9,000 power bodies on the board, and for the opponent to have like 10 cards in their hand, just putting them. Obviously, you need to be careful of like the one Kusanami that's going to be searching when it hits. But aside from that character, you basically never attack. You putting them, put 5 cards back into their deck, and then just keep hitting them, and eventually you should win. Basically, it's Blue Purple Luffy. It's not too hard for Blue Purple Luffy, but a lot of people find that game plan counterintuitive or just don't know the game plan, so they end up losing to just playing kind of standard One Piece. Uh, we only have like 15 minutes left until the championship starts. Let's kind of zoom through some of these. Okay, we have now a couple of these OP12 leaders in here. Bello Betty is a leader that was very powerful in OP11. I think won 6 out of the 8 regionals overseas, which is really crazy. But the new OP12 additions in Rayleigh as well as Green Zoro really, really hurt Betty a lot. So I think that Betty just, in comparison to Red Rayleigh as an aggro deck feels like it's lacking a little bit. Not only that, but it loses to other aggro decks. It loses to Zoro because none of her characters have Rush aside from the 3-cost Inazuma, I believe. So Betty has really fallen off pretty hard. Maybe not as bad as these leader, but still uh, a bit lacking. Blue Purple Sanji. Yeah, sure. Sorry, I can only check chat every now and then, so I might miss a couple of things. But Blue Purple Sanji, we'll talk about that since that's just shot into my eye. Blue Purple Sanji is a very interesting leader. The one thing that's holding this back is that there aren't very powerful Straw Hat type events that cost 3 or less. There are a lot of decent events in the game, but the value that you get from your leader effect is just like draw 2 cards or search, and basically it's just a game of throwing as many spells as possible to just try to get to your 3-cost Sanji being 8,000, 9,000 power as quickly as possible. And the weird thing is that that plan's actually not that bad. Like, it sounds on paper terrible because you're just doing nothing using all of your mana, sorry, all of your dong to just play all of your events and fill up your trash as fast as possible. But because this leader, being a purple Straw Hat leader, is allowed to use Gum Gum Giant, it also has, I think, Konkase. I don't know what it's called in English. Uh, Basically, 8 events that give your leader plus 4,000. It makes it really, really tanky, and you do actually get to the point that your 3-cost Sanji becomes 8, 9,000 power, and because it's so hard to remove, eventually it can push over the opponent. Um, and those characters, actually, because they can't be removed, even the 4-cost Reiju is 9 cost on the opponent's turn, or just in general, actually, but it's more relevant on the opponent's turn because it can't be 9-month, for example, means that it's one of, if not the only, as I don't have enough testing on Koala, leaders in OP12 that can actually contend with Blue Purple Luffy. That being said, though, it struggles really, really hard into Zoro, and rarely it comes down to the way that Blue Purple Sanji builds his deck. If you run a lot of the 3-cost event that bottoms a 4-cost, Gum Gum Jet Culverin, I think it's called. Don't quote me on that. Then you can beat Rayleigh confidently, but then obviously that makes your matchup into any deck that doesn't run 4-cost or less, like Blue Purple Luffy, like Green Zoro, a lot weaker. So a lot of it comes down to the way that Blue Purple Sanji builds his deck. So I think it's still a decent deck, but struggles to find a way to deal with all of these decks. And Green Zoro feels like no matter how you build the deck, you're always going to struggle. Championship should not have started yet. Yeah, it seems relatively soon, but not quite there yet. Now I guess Purple Luffy. Purple Luffy has fallen off similarly to Betty for the exact same reason that Betty fell off. He struggles into Rayleigh and Zoro, which have been pretty strong meta contenders, and for that reason, I'll put it right around Betty, but I'll put it a little bit below just because I think that Betty still maybe has a spot in the meta as just a Luffy killer. But still, these two decks that were at least in Japan very, very prominent in OP11 do struggle a lot with the OP12 changes, which unfortunately didn't really address the biggest problem in the room. Green Blue, Roshinante, deck that I really like a lot. Roshinante, because we were just mentioning the interaction with Snake Dance and the leader of Green Zoro. Again, if you don't attack a character, then you can't get the restand on your leader. So what this deck tries to do is you just play really annoying characters to the board, and you can't hit them because you're forced to hit into a leader because Roshinante as a leader is a blocker. So this deck surprisingly destroys Green Zoro. He gets so many cards in hand. He has a lot of weird resource building tools on the board, and all in all, it's a solid deck. I haven't been able to test the Blue Purple Luffy matchup though, so that's one thing that's really holding me back on rating it properly. But from what I've heard, it doesn't actually do too poorly. But this is a lack of testing. Unfortunately, I can't comment on this deck too much, but it has actually left a surprising number of results. There's been at least 4, maybe 3 or 4 tournaments that I've seen, unofficial tournaments, where Roshinante has done really, really well, or even won. So I'll put him safely in B, but I do think that maybe with the right build, since at least the list that I saw running the 3 Kasiwankofu with only 8 targets seemed a little bit weird for me. But I think the deck could be pretty powerful with the right build, with the right meta. Um, I saw two things, Yellow Kid and Buggy. Let's do Buggy since a lot of people will be curious about that, and then Yellow Kid right after that. Okay, Buggy. Yes, as you just commented, I do think that Rayleigh is still A tier with Buggy in the meta because Buggy loses so hard to Green Zoro. Buggy is allowed to, not this one, but some people have been teching in Slave Arrow. Slave Arrow bouncing back your characters makes it so that the Green Zoro can't use their leader effect, so people have been taking that in to make that matchup a little bit better. I don't really like it that much because you still have to get rid of one of the characters from your board, but it does make you a little bit more tanky. But just a very prominent issue for a lot of these decks is that they're gated by Green Zoro, and Buggy is no different. Buggy would be, I think, top tier, honestly, if Green Zoro didn't exist, but because Green Zoro can, regardless of the 8-cost Crocodile and Mihawk, defending them from being removed from the board, doesn't defend them from being rested. And then once they're rested, you hit into the character once and the leader once, and Buggy just doesn't really have enough resources to defend against that. I think Buggy is still very powerful, but I think that Zoro is really holding down its play rate. So for that reason, he hasn't really been able to break into the top of the meta, and because he hasn't really broken into the top of the meta, Rayleigh's still kind of kept that spot pretty safely. It's kind of like Bella Betty in your format, where like if you hit Buggy, sucks, you're gonna lose that matchup. But um, if you don't, then you have a pretty solid match up against a lot of the other meta. Then Yellow Kid, I almost forgot, went down to Yellow NL. Yellow Kid um, won the Tokyo Championship, and unlike the other championship winners that I threw down in C tier, I think this deck is actually solid. It was a deck that I kind of overlooked, but the 8-cost kid that immediately trashes the opponent's life doesn't care about how much power or how many Gungam Giants the opponent has. So it does have a solid blue-purple Luffy matchup, and because the leader effect makes it so that you can make any of your Supernova characters a blocker, it makes it very good into aggro decks as well. And this meta, not only having lots of aggro decks that are trying to deal with blue-purple Luffy, but blue-purple Luffy himself makes it so that Yellow Kid is actually pretty well situated in the meta. Actually, the person who got he didn't win, I guess, got second place at the Tokyo Championship. The person who got the second place at Tokyo Championship is actually one of the peoples at my locals, so it was really nice to talk to him about that. Unfortunately, I didn't get it on video, but huge congratulations to him. He's always been a cope deck player. I remember back in the day, he was like a massive Foxy player as well. It's hard for me to rate it. I think it'd probably go somewhere around here, though. I think Yellow Kid is very solid. I think the only thing that's really holding it back is that restanding your characters and then making them a blocker isn't as relevant against Zoro, but you do have some tools like the 4-cost Hawkins that can burn the opponent's life that make it annoying for Zoro to actually want to hit into. Uh, I should put Zoro on Sanji because it did win. And I guess just because I saw that comment, I will... Wait, did I get it? Okay, yeah. I'll just talk about it now. This deck is actually better than I thought. I tested a little bit after it did well in the championship, thought maybe it would be like Blue Nami, where people were just caught off guard, not really knowing what the deck does. But surprisingly, this deck can do a lot with very little resources. It regains the actual cards back to hand through the leader effect, but the number of cards that you need on the board, generally, you only need like 2 to 3, and you can set those up very quickly. So in the discussion of aggro decks, it's an aggro deck that does very well into Buggy, which is somewhat relevant, and it's an aggro deck that does well, to an extent at the very least, against things like Blue Purple Luffy and Green Zoro, thanks to things like the 4-cost Arlong that can lock the opponent's characters, and things like the 5-cost Smoker that just double banish the opponent every turn. One thing that holds back this leader, though, is that the character needs to be 7,000 power or less, and the 7,000 attack doesn't really hurt too much against Blue Purple Luffy, but the deck's pretty solid. It's really tricky to actually rank it, though. There's gonna end up being a lot of tier 2 leaders, but I'll put it here right now, but this is like an optimistic here. I think that it has a lot of potential to go up with more testing, with more... I think me testing it, I'm not a very good Zoro Sanji player because I'd never actually really played the deck that much. So I think that maybe in the right hands it could be higher. But as far as I've seen so far, I've only seen one person use the deck and use the deck well, so I'll put it safely here. Uh, Red Smoker. Let's go next. I think this deck is strong. Like, I think this deck has to be strong. It's a very aggressive deck. It has access to the 1-cost Piranha since the leader is Slash. It has access to the 8-cost Mihawk, and the 8-cost Mihawk with your leader effect restands 6 stone. There's so many cards that this deck keeps getting that makes it stronger and stronger, makes this aggressive plan even more powerful. But the one thing that is a bit scary is Green Zoro. I think that Green Zoro is a deck that you always have to just kind of accept you're going to hit at least once. And while the deck isn't terrible into Green Sora, I think that just being a 4-life leader, you do tend to get outpaced if the game goes beyond a certain point where you can start using the 3-cost event that can resend his leader. I still think that uh, Red Green Smoker, in the context of all of these top tier picks, has a pretty solid matchup. Even if you look at things like Black Teach, which is pretty relevant in the meta right now, I think that Smoker's pretty good. I'll put him, her, them in A tier. I feel like I would want to put them higher, but it's hard to without any sort of actual data backing that up. Oh, Kazan just disappeared. Just like his presence in the meta. Kazan was a deck that was very prominent at the start of the meta. I think towards the start of the meta, people were kind of rating him up here, but people slowly started to figure out that he has a really bad green-purple Luffy matchup, he has a really bad blue-purple Luffy matchup, and those decks alone, being about 30% of the share minimum, made it very tricky to actually bring this deck into tournaments. That being said, it does actually have a pretty decent matchup into Zoro and Rayleigh, so if you can somehow avoid the two strongest decks, which I should probably talk about green-purple Luffy next, then the deck is good. But because it has a pretty abysmal matchup into the two strongest decks, it's fallen off pretty hard. It's almost non-existent at this point, unfortunately. But I still think it's maybe around here-ish. I would rather play Kuzan than these decks, although that's a bit harsh. And I guess let's talk about Green Purple Luffy. Championship should be starting soon. Okay, it looks like it started. Let me just put the volume low so that if it starts, we'll be able to hear it. Green Purple Luffy. It's just an argument of does it go here or does it go here? I think it's pretty clearly the second strongest deck. It has a much better Blue Purple Luffy matchup in OP12 now with the new Dead Man's Game. But Dead Man's Game was a card that's a little bit harder to use than people initially expected, just because it has to make your leader plus 3000 power and can't actually go to a character. Green Purple Luffy does actually want to protect his characters pretty often, so you can't afford to run too many copies of the card. So generally, most people only run the card at about 2 copies. That is basically the only OP12 change that the deck got, but that card alone makes the Blue Purple Luffy matchup a lot better. Green Purple Luffy still has a solid matchup into a lot of the other meta, but honestly, he's just pretty solid all around. I think he's much more consistent, much more stable than a deck like Blue Purple Luffy, so I think you're perfectly justified in choosing Green Purple Luffy over a deck like Blue Purple Luffy. But for me, I think that the raw power that Blue Purple Luffy can output is just so strong that I would safely put Green Purple Luffy at the top of A tier. You could even argue putting all of these down another tier and putting Blue Purple Luffy in one tier, Green Purple Luffy in the next tier, but I do think that the argument is kind of between these three for who really takes that second or third spot. Green Zoro has also been coming up recently as a decent option with the new STs. Yeah, you don't see much Green Purple Luffy anymore in Japan, but I feel like that's more just people being bored of the deck. I do think that the deck is still very, very powerful. Are there 2 Bonnies in the list? Oh, there are. Oops. Okay. I guess we'll talk about Bonnie though. Bonnie struggles against Blue Purple Luffy. Bonnie does pretty well into Green Purple, does pretty well into Rayleigh. If there aren't too many power reduction. Green Zoro, the Green Zoro matchup, Green Zoro can actually hit 8 cost Kid twice because the character is 7 cost or higher. Starting soon, but right now it's just a commercial. Bonnie's not in a bad spot, all things considered. It's just that it does have a relatively poor blue-purple Luffy matchup that kind of holds it down. I think, you know what, let's... Not to be mean to the people down here, this is just how the tiers ended up working out. Let's shift everything down a little bit and do this. I think that might be a bit better. I think that these three are kind of in contention for who are actually the top 2, top 3 decks, and these are decks that I think can break into the top, can easily win a tournament on a good day. We have a lot of yellow decks remaining. Let's kind of crack into this until at least this starts. Yellow NL as a deck at the beginning, very high play rate because it had a solid matchup into the new OP12 leaders, but you know, as I'm sure you know if you've played in OP11, does struggle a lot into blue-purple Luffy, just being able to play 9+9 earlier than the opponent can play their 10 cost NL, and once they play their 10 cost NL, once it's rested, if you just hit into that and not focus too much on building your board, then you can pretty easily control the board, control the resource advantage, and it's very hard for NL to actually fight back into the game. Let's put NL here. Yeah. For now, we almost got through this. I don't really want to skip over these too much. Let's check out the stream for a little bit though, and then we'll be back to this. I see a lot of people asking about Marcos. I will put him in after the first match, but championship time! Yay! Sorry that I had to focus on the tier list a little bit. I don't want to go back and forth between talking to chat and talking about the tier list for people who are here for just one or the other. So, now that I'm here a little bit, now that we're getting into the championship, how has your day been? Very open question too. I don't know how many people are here, but that's a lot of people. Okay, I generally don't look at that stat.
激アツのね、すごかったですよね。最後の本当の攻防というか、駆け引きのあたりでもう講師の2人出してなければとかね。まあこれがやっぱ上から見てるからのね。
Zuma TCG. I appreciate you watching the VOD anyways. Very much appreciate that. I think that perhaps we may have, like 2 weeks ago, a special guest. We may at some point have Revoye coming in to talk a little bit, and we'll make sure that his mic is decent. And we may also have Jonas coming in a bit later once NA starts to wake up. A holiday in Italy? What kind of holiday is going on in Europe right now? In Japan, it's just a very normal weekend, but it's a bit more fun when you guys are here. So yeah, I used to never watch these championships. I just like flick through them, see which decks ended up winning, see which decks did well. But now that I actually have people to watch it with and commentate over for, it makes it a lot more interesting. Ah, vacation. Nice though. Yeah. Hey, if you're what time is it in NA? NA South America. They South SA? I don't know. I feel like SA means something else. But 3 a.m., 2 a.m. Yeah. Well, at the very least, it's Saturday, so even if you ruin your schedule right now, you'll still have another day to fix it. So, appreciate it. Oh, looks like Kitaba's pointing at me. Or not Kitaba. Kitaba is no longer on the stream. Takeshi. I actually haven't met Takeshi. I've met all of the other people who are on the stream, just by merit of going to all of the championships that I can. Lots of nice people. I'm sad that Kitaba is no longer on the stream. Ooh, okay, it looks like today we're going to get... Not now, but at some point today, we are going to get OP13 leader reveals. That'll be hype. Speaking of which, do you guys have any predictions or any wants for what you want the OP13 leaders to be or what colors? I think that we had leaks that they're supposed to be the three brothers, Ace Double Luffy, as well as Roger. We know of Roger and Luffy, Ima and Bonnie. Do you have any color predictions for what you think they might be? Purple Yellow Luffy. Yeah, they need to print Purple Yellow Luffy at some point to complete the purple Luffy color wheel. That's the only one that we're missing. But we did already get red green Luffy spoiled last time. Black Ima. Yeah, I mean, I think the general trend is that all the bad guys just get mono black. I hope that Ima gets like some sort of color combination. Okay, let's get into the... Oh, let me get a good color up here. Okay, Blue Purple Luffy at the top at 25.9%. Green Zoro at 15.1%. Green Purple Luffy at 10.1%. This has been pretty standard. I think that Black Teach has risen a little bit from last week, but Black Teach 5.9%. Green Bonnie, Green Yellow Law has risen up a lot. I guess the win last week has inspired a lot of people. Red Rayleigh at 4%. Red Green Smoker has risen, so maybe people are seeing what I'm seeing. Blue Buggy 3.6%. Kind of struggling. Ah, went too fast. And Red Shanks 2.8%. And the rest are not within that. And I think I saw on Twitter that there's at least one Bonnie in the top 16. Okay, we have 4. Oh, this is a... Oh, dude. Okay, sorry. Nothing too crazy here. I'm just glad that Red Green Smoker's here. But there's 4 Blue Purple Luffys, 3 Green Zoros, 3 Red Green Smokers, 2 Green Purple Luffys, 1 Rayleigh, 1 Bonnie, 1 Yellow Kid. Honestly, if we're looking at our unfinished tier list right now, like, my Cope leaders sneaking into the top here, the only one not there in these top spots are Buggy, so not bad. We got another Yellow Kid, though. I did not see a single Red Green Smoker for like the past 2 weeks, but like in my head I was like, this deck has to be good in this meta. Like I feel like it does pretty decently against a lot of the OP12 leaders into the OP11 metagame that already exists, and was just waiting for someone to properly pilot it. So I'm glad that like, I mean, first time that we're seeing it, I believe in 2 or 3 weeks reached top cut, but we have 3 in the top 16. Ooh. I can maybe show you my Blue Purple Luffy list. I haven't actually posted this publicly. But let's see as we get into the first match what our matchup is going to be. Seems like we have Green Bonnie. I know Fidelia CCG is going to be pretty happy about that. Against, is it going to be like Yellow Kid or something really weird? Something that's impossible for me to commentate over because I never played the matchup before. Yeah, I think we're going to get OP13 leaders today. Okay, we have plenty against... They spend a lot of time on this screen, don't they? Ooh, Red Green Smoker. Okay. This sounds like it might be a little bit hard for Smoker, but it'll be an interesting matchup though. I think generally Red Green Smoker, I think in OP11 plays a kind of hybrid between the aggressive version and the defensive version around 8-cost Kid, but in OP12 now, with the advent of the 8-cost Mihawk that can restand for Bidong and is a blocker, as well as the 1-cost Perona, the deck has become a lot more aggressive, just low to the ground to aggro using the Dongli you get back from your leader effect from the Cavendish, oh no, not Cavendish, what's it called, the 5-cost Smoker, and the 8-cost Mihawk. Just play a lot of characters, play them quickly, hit fast, hit hard. Bonnie may be able to stunt that aggression thanks to her leader effect as well as 8-cost Kid, which she still does tend to run, where Smoker doesn't, so this will be one of the differences in the decks coming into OP12.
値がありますので、まあどっちも8コスキットを結構中心としたプランを
my
通ることが多く、ただまあスモーカーの方が
You know what?
若干アグレッシブなイメージがあるので、まあその多分まあ遅くまあ後半になっていくと、
You're going to hate this list. I'm 90% sure. But hold on, let me quickly flash on the screen before we get into the game. It's cooked. I'll show you after the game. I'm trying to show it to you, but I don't run the 9-cost Sanji at 4 copies. Anyways, let's get into this game though. So, as we just mentioned, the 1-cost Piranha is a searcher that searches slash type characters, which is a very unique or slash attribute. I don't know what they're called in the top right corner. But your leader does need to be slashed to use it, which means that Bonnie doesn't have access to the card. Bonnie does also gain the same green buff, so can use this new 8-cost Mihawk, but for her, not searchable, so she does maybe suffer a bit more from consistency. Still, though, she does have access to things like the 5-cost Cavendish, so this is going to be an interesting trade-off to see. The 1-cost Piranha as well as the 1-cost Paradise Waterfall heavily imply that the Smoker does run the 8-cost Mihawk, so we'll likely see that at some point because of how many ways that card can be searched. Okay, Smoker though, starting out with the Virgo. You probably do want to start with this Virgo because rather than finding the 8-cost Mihawk, you are going to be looking for that 5-cost Smoker early on. Both of them are searchable off of the new searchers, but he does seem to find it, so not a huge problem. The nice thing though about playing this Virgo first is that if you do find it in the first search, then your second search with the Pirona doesn't need to look for the 5-cost Smoker, and you can instead look for the 8-cost Mihawk, which now he doesn't actually need to search for because he just has it. Okay. Is the Pirona, and you're going to do with the rest of his dong. He may just not use any of the dong, and would have hoped for Pirona to just use, not Pirona, Bonnie to use the counter. Picks up the 8-cost Mihawk though, so now basically the next couple of turns, aside from the 7-dong turn, are going to be set in stone for Smoker. So Smoker's board already going to be pretty aggressive from the early game. Unfortunately, the thanks to Bonnie's leader effect, even if this 5-cost Smoker is developed, it will be kind of tricky to actually find an aggressive angle on Bonnie. But nice, Bonnie using Uruji. Basically the only turn that I think that this card's worthwhile playing. Other turns it feels very slow to play, you can't play it off 8-cost Kid, but PRB with the new 3-cost Bonnie is going to help with that a lot. Okay. Does he have something to play though? Yeah, it just goes for the 5k. Yeah, this is a not bad play though. He would have ideally wanted to play something like the 3-cost Sanji that looks like Nami to just be able to develop a board very quickly, but that attack would just be rested by the opponent's leader effect the next turn. So not having that character, but does have 7-cost Hody, so does have something that she can play. They can play next turn. Now on Bonnie's turn, she has the 5-cost Bonnie, but likely doesn't have enough dong to be able to rest to play it out, so we'll probably just going to play the 5-cost Cavendish. Yeah. Ooh, looking to play the 3-cost Tashigi here as well. Interesting. Does Smoker have... I guess Smoker does have Mole Pistol. Mole Pistol, yeah. Mole Pistol could remove this 5-cost Cavendish, so it make it better for Bonnie to play out the Tashigi here, but generally Smoker not a deck that removes too hard, so I could have also seen Bonnie just wanting to hit a little bit harder. Still though, I think that Bonnie as a deck, assuming that she plays the 8-cost Kid, which we still haven't seen, may want to take this game a little bit more slowly, so really no reason to attach more dong. Nine cost Shanks now in hand. We need to see what kind of top-end Bonnie's running to actually know what her game plan's going to end up being. Because if the deck doesn't actually run the 8-cost Kid, which I've seen some lists that don't, some lists prefer to just play towards the 8-cost Mihawk, then maybe the deck is a bit different. But if she doesn't run this 8-cost Mihawk, or if she doesn't run this 8-cost Kid, it could make it a bit tricky to play out the later game. Still though, this 7-cost Hody is going to be very good here, because it rests the opponent's... Ooh, yeah, it gets the banish off too. Bonnie not wanting to defend that. So, going to be a very aggressive turn for Smoker, playing towards his game plan, and Bonnie still not finding the 8-cost Kid if she has it in her deck. Does Smoker recently play Honesty Impact? I feel like even when I saw that card being played in Smoker, it was only played at like 1 copy. Generally, what I see from Smoker is them playing Mole Pistols because it's just easier to use at 4 dong. So the Smoker maybe deciding if he wants to either hit harder with his leader or if he wants to play the 2-cost Coal Shuttle, but decides to go for the aggressive angle on this Cavendish. Yeah, actually, the Bonnie was forced to take that 7,000 banish hit, so it is going to hurt her. The next 2 hits going to the Cavendish are going to make Bonnie use a lot of counters. So now, this maybe indicates that she doesn't run the 8-cost Kid. Maybe Fidelity G would actually know this a little bit more than I do, since I think that Bonnie mains stay close together. But the way that he's playing, cutting this much counter, makes it so that if he does end up playing 8-cost Kid within the next couple of turns, it'll make it much, much harder to defend. So perhaps doesn't even run the card and is just trying to focus on the pure value. Now on this turn, if he does play the 8-cost Mihawk, he can restand 6 dong total thanks to the Cavendish as well as the 8-cost Mihawk's on-play effect, which means that you can also play the 5-cost Bonnie on the same turn, so would be very powerful. Although I really like the way that the Smoker's playing very aggressively, choosing not even to play the Coal Shield the last turn, just playing to its outs, and making Bonnie use as much counter as possible. Against a deck like Bonnie that plays around the 8-cost Kid generally, at least from an outside perspective, you really want to force them to use as much counter as possible so that when and if that 8-cost Kid comes onto the board, that card is much easier to deal with. So now, seeing what we were talking about, 6 dong up, which is in a way basically Smoker's leader effect, and being able to play the 5-cost Bonnie now. So being able to put up 2 blockers here that are quite powerful and refuel your hand is going to be pretty powerful given how bad that last turn was for Bonnie. Yeah, no, Smoker's basically on perfect curve right now. Next turn will also be able to play the 8-cost Mihawk, and this 8-cost Mihawk, I believe that you can't play a 7-cost or higher after. I can't remember if it was 7 or 8, but I think it was 7-cost or higher, which means that he, at the very least, can't do something like Mihawk into Smoker effect, Leader effect, and play the 7-cost Hody, but he still has a very explosive turn because this 8-cost Mihawk right now is only going to basically cost 1 dong. He has 9 dong, so he does kind of have the freedom to attach this first dong wherever he wants to. He chooses to only attach 1 dong. Wonder what Smoker would really want to do with the rest of his dong though. You probably at the very least leave 1 up for Paradise Waterfall, just not let that get stuck in your hand. But you may just want to attach the rest of your dong to your characters and just go really aggressive to not give Bonnie a chance into this game. With the Smoker first though, so Bonnie is going to be able to get her leader effect off, which she wasn't able to last turn. You'll be able to rest this Hody most likely. I don't see why you wouldn't rest the Hody. Yeah. But still, she does have to deal with this 8,000 power attack, and the Mihawk can't take a free block here. So if he does defend it, he does need to block and 1k at the very least. But Bonnie's hand very, very thin at this point, and Smoker trying to exploit that fact. Yeah, does the block in 2k. Choosing to hold on to the 1-cost Bonnie. Interesting. 1-cost Bonnie is a card that starts to lose value later on because you do want to be playing your stronger, bigger characters later on, so you don't really have the timing to not only play Bonnie, use the active main, and also attach a dong onto something like the 8-cost Kid. But the fact that she kept the card maybe means that she is going to be looking for that 8-cost Kid rather soon. But given the fact that she doesn't have very many low-cost blockers, she doesn't have very many cards in her hand, nor can she get the dong onto that 8-cost Kid if she does find it. I wonder what the Bonnie is actually looking for at this current moment. Yeah, and there's the 1 cost 8,000 blocker from Smoker. Now, what's he going to do with the last 7 dong? Presumably last 6 dong. I think what could be really annoying here is to just use these 2,000 power characters as attackers. Just slowly chip away at the opponent's resources. It seems like he's not going to go for that. Debating what to do. It's hard to take out the Cavendish here as well because you could just block with the Bonnie. And Smoker, although his board is in a very powerful state right now, he is still 2 life with only 5 cards in hand, so not an overwhelmingly dominant position. On 4 dong goes leader. This is always going to go through, but it does play into 8 cost Kid. Although, with absolute knowledge, we do know that Bonnie is in a spot where she doesn't have 8 cost Kid yet, unless... Oh, that's 9 cost Shanks. 9 cost Shanks, not the worst draw in the world right now, given the other options in her hand were to just play something like Carrot and pray that you survive the next couple of turns. 9 Shanks will allow her to leave 1 dong up for her leader effect as well, with the 2 blockers on the field still, and this Cavendish being able to restand some dong for you to get a little bit more value. You could also... I don't know, I don't really like playing the Searcher and just immediately replacing it with the 9 cost Shanks here, but this Searcher is going to be very tricky to get value out of right now with the number of 2,000 power characters on Smoker's board. Yeah, this 5,000 power attack. I think that red-green Smoker also is playing around the... Yeah, okay, plays the Shanks, but I think that the way that Smoker just countered out that attack, he's likely playing around 10 cost Doflamingo. If he does take the free block from Doflamingo, though there is a lot of value to be had from that, it does open you... Or, sorry, block from Mihawk, it opens you up to Doflamingo. So, countering that attack out, making sure that the Bonnie uses her dong before she attacks with this Cavendish also makes it tricky for the Bonnie to attack with her blockers as well, because she's still pretty low. Although, now she doesn't have to deal with the banished attack, so that is something. But again, the Smoker next turn is probably just going to play the second 8 cost Mihawk that he has in his hand and just keep going aggressive. If the Bonnie had 8 cost Kid, she likely would have already played it, or she would have played differently in the early game to save more counter. But this is a huge indicator to Smoker that he has the green light to just go really hard for life. Still though, Bonnie's board is getting a little bit more scary as time goes on. This 9 cost Shanks able to flip the board pretty cleanly. If Bonnie has enough time to really get back into the game, then she might actually not be in a bad spot. Oh, this Bonnie might actually just leave 3 dong up. You leave 3 dong up, then it plays around the opponent's Hody. Yeah, if Bonnie survives this next turn, she's in a pretty decent spot. Yeah, okay, Bonnie playing around the Hody. Very nicely played. Oh, still though, Smoker is in a situation where he could just choose to play cost Mihawk instead, but is going to have difficulties going for lethal if he wants to on this turn. He can try to hit with 2 attacks since one of them is going to be rested by the 8 cost, or by the leader Bonnie. Get... the 2 attacks are very, very big. You could even use these 2,000 power attackers as well. So though, now that the 5 cost Smoker is gone, this Mihawk doesn't cost 1 cost anymore. It costs 2, which I don't know how he'd ever recover. 2 cost 8,000 blocker is pretty terrible, honestly, right? Likely the play is still going to be to play 8 cost Mihawk, because if the Smoker can survive this turn and set up for a position to play Hody the next turn, then he could be in a solid spot. But he does need to be careful of the fact that Bonnie likely plays Hody at 4 copies as well, so he can't feel too comfortable behind a bunch of blockers. May still be debating between whether he should play the 7 cost Hody or the 8 cost Mihawk though. Plays the Hody though. Ooh. Is he going for it? This is really risky right now. Not only does Bonnie still have the Dong up, you do go down. So if Smoker doesn't finish the game on this turn, the game is likely just over. But perhaps thinking that he has it. Still though, Bonnie having a 2k, having the 0 cost event, this last life guaranteed to be at least 1,000 counter due to the fact that he has the 0 cost event in his hand. But with the 8k attack, he may... Yeah, he may just have it. We'll have to see. No, I think it comes down to what this last life is going to be. Although it feels very awkward to defend this 8k attack. Using the 0 cost event feels bad here. Using the 2k, 1k, 1k feels very bad here. I don't think you can defend this attack. I think if you defend this attack, you give the opponent too much information to hit at lower annoying thresholds. If he defends the attack, he goes down to 1 card in hand, then Smoker just attaches 2 Dong to leader, hits for 7, and then attaches the rest to Hody, and then it's game. So he has to let this attack through and then hope that he has enough counter to defend the next attacks. But does he just not have it? He may just not have it. Yeah, it's hard for me to calculate this with that actual Dong in my hands, so let me get this, because he may just have it. Yeah, he just has it, doesn't he? Alright, the second that I grab Dong, I could tell. But yeah, the 0 cost event going to be used kind of inefficiently here. Yeah, okay, yeah, he totally had it. That's my bad. But you know, we have to always pretend that there's a there's a way back into the game, right, guys? That's what you have to do as a commentator. I'm gonna have Dong cards on standby now, so I can do that calculation quickly. Yeah. Well, I saw some comments in chat from people that I know in Japan, Hunter and Fidelio, that were saying that he is an 8-cost kid user, so it seems like maybe he just wasn't able to draw it this time. That 8-cost kid maybe would have made a big difference in this game. Could he have drawn it? But unfortunately, not this time. Still though, Red-Green Smoker, as the tier list dictates, is the superior deck to Bonnie. That is how tier lists work. Not actually, but let's wait a little bit for potential OP13 spoilers, and after that, when we're getting into the intermission between Game 1 and Game 2, we'll get back into the tier list. This was the top 16 match, first round of Top Cut. Okay. I think Red Rayleigh's better than Zoro, yeah, but I think that that is a bit contentious. Green Zoro is much more popular though. Okay. Just show me the cards. That's a good shirt though, yeah. I thought they had like a uniform, like everyone else is in suits, but he's just here, like he's on vacation in Hawaii. Now. Okay, the second that this pops up, I'll pause it and translate it for you guys, so you get the very first translation. Okay, Red Black Subble, which is already exists, but Red Black Subble, 5,000 power, 5 life leader, with Dressrosa and Revolutionary Army typing, which is very good typing. If your life is at 4 or higher, this character gains minus 1,000 power. So until you get to 3 life, you're a 4,000 power leader, which sucks. But uh, Don X1, if you have an 8 cost or higher character on your board, your leader or what? Your leader and characters gain plus 1,000 power. And this is not your turn, not enemy turn, just permanently. If you have an 8 cost on the board and you have a Dong on your leader, then your leader and characters all gain plus 1,000 power. Yo, Dress Rose is back. It's a 5 life, 2 color leader that gives your entire board and leader plus 1,000 power. That's sick. Go through this a little bit. It's I don't know if the correct wording would be permanent effect, but it is permanent. So on your turn, on the opponent's turn, your leader and opponents, and your leader and your characters gain plus 1,000 power. So he's in a way a 6,000 power leader with 5 life that has access to the Dressrosa package, which is historically exceptionally powerful, and the Revolutionary Army package, which makes a lot of your characters 8 cost on the board. So and I guess 8 cost dragons also an 8 cost character that can give your leader dong, so it could work well with him as well, being a revolutionary as well. Oh, yeah, 7k on your turn, 6k on theirs, but yeah. More leaders? Red Blue Ace. Interesting. Dude, they're just printing old cards but with new text. Like Red Blue Marco. Let's see what we have. I just looked at the power. 6,000 power, 3 life. So it seems like I found my new main. On the opponent's attack, once per turn, you may trash 1 card and give one of the opponent's characters or leaders minus 2,000 power for the battle, which is very good on a leader. And Don X1 once per turn. When you take damage or one of your characters with a base power of 6,000 or higher is KO'd, draw 1 card. Once per turn. And also it doesn't have to be on the opponent's turn or anything, so I don't know if there's ways to KO your own characters or take your own life. But it's when you take damage. So that seems exclusively on the opponent's turn, but there may be some cards synergized with that. Interesting. And so it's a very defensive leader effect. Both of the effects are pretty defensive. It just doesn't have the same absurdity that Blue Purple Luffy has. Still though, being able to use the 7 cost ace that has rush and minus 2,000 power to two characters, being able to use the 7 cost Newgate potentially could be very, very powerful. Interesting, and just being a 6,000 power 3 life leader is very annoying too. Okay, well, we've seen 3 leaders so far. So we saw Red Green Luffy last week. Are we gonna get any more? Sure. Okay, it seems like this is all we're gonna get for the top 16 match, but maybe you're gonna see the other leaders in the next matches. Still the Sabo is crazy looking, no? This ace is hard to measure since you always have to compare it to Blue Purple Luffy. But red and blue Whitebeard Pirates already has good synergy thanks to Marco. So we'll have to see really what goes down there. And red black Sabo. Didn't think they'd print another red black Sabo, but that's a crazy card to me. Anyways, let's get back into the tier list. And yeah, the Sabo's crazy. Ace, True. Oh yeah, dude. Ace with the Flame Emperor, Inte, being able to make your leader 9k, double attack, KO, and 8,000 power or less. That'll be nice too. Yeah, actually, there's a lot of really nice cards that they can use. Can I use this to look for Whitebeard pirates? I can. Nice. Okay, red and blue. And it's 6,000 power or higher characters that it defends. These are some really old cards, but these used to be crazy strong. Damn, so many of them are 5,000 power. Marco's something. Peach's maybe something, depending on the list. Oh, there's also the PRB 02 Marco blocker, which is pretty generically powerful. Can't really use the cards that really manipulate top of your deck. Being able to search Jills is nice. But yeah, let me try to pull up the blue purple Luffy list if I can. In the meantime though, let me try to do this at the same time. I said at the same time and I totally just ignored one side and only did the other one. Okay. Yep. Okay. As a thank you to you guys watching my stream, this is the list that I brought to my flagship the other week. It's extremely aggressive because I think that in this meta, aggressive blue purple Luffy could actually be much stronger than the defensive version. To justify this list, let me kind of present this to you. So, green purple Luffy, you can play against it in two different ways. You can either play slowly through 8 Katakuri and Giant and out attrition the opponent, or you can play with Forecast Pudding and just kind of break their ankles before the game starts. And because Deadman's game gives green purple Luffy a lot of different avenues back into the game that he didn't have in OP11, just breaking their ankles ahead of time with 9-cost Luffy with 8-cost Luffy, to me, has been the easier way to play the game thanks to this Forecast Pudding. Red Rayleigh, you do want to play the more standard, slower version, but the 9-cost Mom is still in the deck to deal with Red Rayleigh. Godthread's still in the deck to deal with Red Rayleigh, so that matchup is still relatively decent. Also, Gravity Blade, just to deal with these sort of other matchups like Teach as well. Speaking of Teach, Teach is also weak against specifically this 8-cost Luffy. Lucci's weak against 8-cost Luffy, so just in this meta, I think aggressive blue purple Luffy list could be very good, and Green Zoro. Green Zoro, you do kind of prefer to be a bit more defensive, but the 8-cost Katakuri, due to the fact that the opponent has ways of resting your characters and making it so that your blockers feel less valuable, has been the reason why I took that card out. The reason why this is at 3 is because there aren't that many mirrors recently. And if there's more mirrors in the meta, I would increase this to 4, but because other matchups this sometimes is more of a win more card, I have it at 3, but I can easily put that back up. Anyways, yeah, aside from this Sanji, actually, I mean, the list as a whole is kind of weird, but the Sanji is mostly just a mirror breaker. Otherwise, I feel like most of the time I can win with these 8 and 9-cost Luffys just hitting the opponent's face really hard. But I think that with the thing is, the way that day went, I ended up going 4-1. I lost to a misplay. I would have won, but I bottom decked a Pudding when I should have left it on top, thinking another turn ahead. But I was only thinking like one turn ahead when I wasn't really thinking about how I was going to end the turn after, end the game the turn after that. So that was my misplay. If not for that, I could have easily went 5-0, I think, with the last matchups of the day. But this is what I brought on that day. I still haven't posted it. For Pudding because I'm going very aggressive. So the idea is to just hit the opponent hard, put their hand to like 7 or 8 cards, slam Pudding, and then kind of ruin their day that way. It's 2 different ways to play blue purple Luffy. This is a weird deck list. I don't think everyone's going to like this, but I do like this aggressive version. Anyways, thank you guys for watching the stream, and let's get back into the tier list. What do you guys want to see next? Okay, I just saw someone say Koala, so let's talk about Koala. Koala has not seen very many results. Let me see if I can find one, because I know that my friend played it pretty recently. I didn't bookmark it. Koala needs to play around revolutionaries, and the revolutionary cards that she has aren't that great. They increase their cost to 8, but the issue is that Zoro can affect base cost, so even if she can increase the cost of her characters to 8, the issue is that Zoro's 4-cost Kuina as well as the 5-cost Tashigi just rest them and hit into them anyways, and Koala never gets a chance to really build up her board to get to use her leader ability. So Koala has a really devastating Zoro matchup, a really bad Rayleigh matchup, and she does okay into Blue-Purple Luffy. I don't know how the Green-Purple Luffy matchup goes, but it's because of this upper block of decks that are exist, Koala's been kind of gated from really entering the meta. I do think that within the right meta, she could be solid, but just with this current meta, with the aggressive decks at the top that can easily either take your board with Green Zoro or just kill you really quickly with Rayleigh, she's been kind of struggling to find her footing. So unfortunately, I would have to put her down here for now, but I really hope that with time she can sort of find her way up here. Let's put it here. Let's talk about Teach, since he's kind of like one of the more meta-relevant leaders currently. Black Teach is a deck that, at least in Japan, has been the second most prominent in these unofficial tournaments. Let me find one of them. Especially in unofficial tournaments in Japan, or in Tokyo. He's been doing really well. Ooh. Maybe not recently. Hold on. Can't find it. But in terms of unofficial tournaments, Black Teach has been doing quite well and has pretty high presence, generally the second highest played deck after Blue-Purple Luffy in the meta right now. But I don't actually think that his play rate really equates directly or correlates directly to his actual strength. I think that Black Teach as a deck does okay into decks like Green Zoro, but really struggles. I mean, Green Zoro is bad if he finds his cards, but Black Lucci can play in a way and use cards such as... Is it called? I know it's Black something, but that probably brings up the color. Black Spiral, Black Vortex. Oh, I'm looking at red and blue cards. Black Vortex in Black Teach makes it so the opponent, or the Green Zoro leader, can't use their leader effect. So with that card, that matchup's become a lot better. But still, Blue-Purple Luffy can be tricky. Green-Purple Luffy has always been and still will always be devastating. So although Black Teach is pretty prominent in the meta, I don't necessarily think that he's really in this upper echelon of leaders. Karugara, I made a video on recently. I need to upload more videos. I have a lot of them uploaded, but I've been moving along some other projects, which I really want to share with you guys soon, but that'll be exciting. Karugara as a deck is similar to Rayleigh in that they're aggro decks that are good into aggro decks, but Karugara actually is good into Rayleigh. At least that's what I found out from my testing. When I recorded the video, I generally didn't know if Rayleigh was good or if Karugara was good in that matchup, but it turned out that Karugara was pretty solid in that matchup. The one issue, though, is that Karugara does, at least in this rock, paper, scissors, struggle more against Green-Purple Luffy and Blue-Purple Luffy, and there was another leader that struggled specifically into those that I ended up putting lower in the tier list. I don't remember which one it was. But Karugara, not bad, but I don't necessarily think that he's, like, in contention for the top of the meta. I'll put him, like, around here-ish. And the leaders that I'm talking about are only leaders that are kind of within the discussion of meta decks. So even if he's here, that still means that he's perfectly playable, because if anything's on this list, aside from maybe kind of down here-ish area, I think that they're all solid contenders to do well in a tournament. Green Yellow Law, Nami. Green Yellow Law came up first. Let's talk about that. Green Yellow Law, I think, is very powerful. End of discussion. Oop. Next, green yellow law. It's the thing with this deck is that it's always been kind of generically powerful into blue purple Luffy, just by merit of being able to play lots of 6,000 power characters very early on, and blue purple Luffy doesn't have a means of really affecting the board. But green yellow law struggles a little bit into these really aggressive decks like red Rayleigh that exist. So if green yellow law can sort of avoid some bad matchups in the preliminary rounds and make it to top cut, I think that it's one of those decks that's really well situated to win top cut once it makes it there, if that makes sense. There's decks that are like really good across the board that like you hit into any random decks, you're likely going to win most of the time, like blue purple Luffy. But once you reach top cut and you're hitting into the decks that are specifically designed to beat your deck, then you start to lose. Green Yellow Law is one of those decks that beats blue purple Luffy. So once he reaches top cut, he can run away with the tournament like we saw last week, but he can also slowly fade away in the preliminary rounds. I think that Green Yellow Law though would be here. He could potentially break into here though. Very tricky. But top 8 is 2 green Zoros, 2 red green Smokers, 2 blue purple Luffys, 1 green purple Luffy, and 1 yellow Kid. So the yellow Kid survived. There's a lot of people adding me. Lucci's still fine. He did well in a tournament a couple of weeks ago, but the start deck buffs make it a little bit more tricky with some Buggy and some Teach running around, so a little bit worse than he was before, but he's still here and there, I would say. Okay. And we have Green Zoro against what is going to be our exciting matchup. So I know they didn't pick this matchup for the Green Zoro. Probably not going to get the red green Smoker. Maybe get yellow Kid this time. Now you can only go to one regional in Japan, so if you see a person on the stream, it'll always be someone different if it's in the same wave. But it is going to be yellow Kid. Blue Buggy has not affected our meta too much just because it has a really bad Green Zoro matchup. Yeah, the way that Japanese championship works is that you play in the store qualifiers and then you can qualify for one championship. And then right now we're in wave 1, so we have 8 weeks of championships and this is going to be the final one. And then we're going to have like a 2-week break where we have no tournaments because Japan is very good at organizing tournaments and engaging their player base. And then you can try again next couple of months. But yeah, you can only choose to go to one of the regionals that you unfortunately qualify for. PRV comes out at the end of this month. I don't know when OP13 comes out though. Yeah, how do you qualify for Worlds in Japan? So you play through store qualifiers. If you place top 3 in store qualifiers, which is anywhere from an 8-man, but you have to get really lucky to get into the 8-man tournaments, to 32-man tournaments. If you get top 3 in one of those tournaments, then you are allowed to go to the regionals, or these championships, as we call them in Japan. At these championships, if you get top 32, it used to be top 16, but they made it a little bit easier. You get top 16/32 in these tournaments, then you qualify for nationals. The nationals is going to be the top 32 from all of the 8 different regionals that we had in Japan, and they're all going to fight the whatever 8 times 32 people are going to fight for the top 32 for that. The top 32 for that tournament now qualify for Japan finals. And then we do 2 waves of that. So wave 1, wave 2. The second wave has the exact same structure, and at the end we're going to have 32 people from each of the nationals. The last 64 people fight for however many world spots we get. So it's very, very hard to get to that point where you can qualify for worlds because there's so many different steps that you need to consistently do well in because you only have one chance. Like you can only go to one regional in each wave, So I guess if you consider both ways, you have 2 chances, but per regional, per wave, you only have 1 chance, and usually that means that you have 1 chance per set. So, like, people need to bring their best deck, they need to bring their best game, because if they fail in this championship, their run's over for the next 3 months. But, if you can make it to the Japan finals, though, it's something like 8 out of maybe even 12, I think, last year, out of 64 people make Worlds, which is a crazy number. So if you can make it that far, the rest is easier, but it's about getting to that point. I've made it to Top Cut, but I've never made it to the Nationals before. So though, let's get into game. Yellow Kid versus Green Zoro. This is actually one of the matchups that I'm not too well versed in. Yellow Kid is a deck that does pretty well into Blue Purple Luffy and does pretty well into aggressive decks like Red Rayleigh, but the fact that we see multiple Yellow Kids across several weeks probably means that he does decently in this matchup as well. We still will have to see though. This 4-cost Hawkins that we see on the field now, as well as the 6-cost Kuma, which we do see in his search, though he can't search it, are going to be pretty pivotal in this matchup, because not only do they trash the opponent's life when they are KO'd, which Zoro is likely just going to punch into them because of the way that his leader effect wants to work, but Kuma also increases your life twice, once from the on-play effect and once from the on-KO effect. So can Kid stall out enough for these cards to be relevant? We'll see. Honestly, I don't know how this matchup really wants to go. What should you replace the 2K promo Zoro? I think that you could just replace it with any slash 2K counter. I think the Zoro's generally used just because it's like decent body, but most of the time it's just used as a slash 2K, so any slash 2K would work in that spot. What is he searching with? Oh, okay. Hiyori. Hiyori being able to pick up a slash character will end up sending some of the cards like the 7-cost Hodi to the bottom of his deck, which may end up being relevant given the fact that Yellow Kid can easily turn a lot of his characters into blockers later on. But picking up a 1K counter, fortunately the rested Hiyori isn't going to do too much in the face of all of these 1-cost 2000 characters on Kid's board. Kid, though, now his play is probably pretty set in stone. He's likely just going to play the 4-cost Hawkins. But the question is he going to use his leader effect? You can use the leader effect even if the character is active to just turn them into a blocker, but I don't really see a reason to do so currently. And yeah, is he? Okay, just past the turn. So if you use your leader effect now and turn Hawkins into a blocker, it does feel free, but you have to turn your life over, which means that next turn, if, for example, if the opponent hits into your character, then you don't get to retrieve your flipped life. If the opponent hits into your leader, you don't really get to get value out of the blocker. So it gets awkward to use your leader effect in the next coming turns if you end up using it on this turn right now. So Yellow Kid usually just wants to play the 4-cost Kid here, or 4-cost Hawkins here, just pass the turn, and then after it attacks the next turn, maybe start looking to restand it and get more benefit out of the character. Still though, Zoro's hand not looking very good. He misses out. He misses out on the 5-cost Tashigi, so doesn't get the free Dong onto his leader. Potentially looking for it here now, though. This is top 8, so we still have 3 more matches. Thank you guys for watching. I know that it's, I think in Europe it's like early morning, but in NA it is middle of the night, so I appreciate you guys watching. There's the 5-cost Tashigi that he would have wanted on this turn, but maybe looking for the Cavendish instead. Don't know actually. I guess the Cavendish gains more value over time, and Yellow Kid is a deck that's going to start playing some larger characters in the late game. I don't really know what goes into this decision. California being 110 is certainly not the worst, considering we have Jackie over here at 4 AM, but I appreciate you guys watching nonetheless. Happy Saturday to you guys. 3 AM. Yeah. Anyways, yellow kid now. 5. It's 5 a.m. Double Brazil chat. Shout out Brazil. Brazil seems like such a fun place. But now we have the attacks coming in from Kid. We may start to see one of the weaknesses that Green Zoro has, where yes, the leader can hit into a character and leader on the same turn, but sometimes you just don't really want to hit into the characters. So this Hawkins likely just going to become a blocker at the end of the turn, and I don't know what Kid really wants to play on this turn. He does have... Oh, he has the Kuma. Sorry, I thought that was just another 7-cost law. But yeah, this Kuma is really going to annoy Zoro here. Both of the characters on the board have very, very powerful on-KO effects that Zoro doesn't really want to hit into, but if he doesn't hit into them, he's not really getting the value out of his leader. This Kuma, though, one thing that people do forget is that Kuma, on the turn that he is played, becomes an 8-cost. This is mainly to just synergize well with the Black-Yellow Koala's leader effect, but unfortunately for Green Zoro, it's not a huge issue. Ooh, pretty good trigger too. For people who forgot, Hawkins' trigger is just a 2-draw 1 trash. So, staring in the face of a solid trigger that will help the kid start to unbrick his hand a little bit. This Hawkins also being a blocker. Kuma on the board that you don't really want to hit into, though you can rest it with the 5-cost Tashigi, though he didn't choose to pick it last turn, are all going to be pretty annoying for Zoro. I think that if Kid can get to a spot where he can develop this kind of board, it makes it very uncomfortable for Zoro to play out the game. Whether or not it's actually winning or losing, it creates a lot of space for Zoro to make misplays. What does Zoro want to do here now? He chose not to pick up the 5-cost Hashigi last turn, electing to pick up the Cavendish, so he will probably end up playing that this turn. Yeah. And that does mean that he isn't going to be able to rest the character and immediately attack into it, but I guess reading how the matchup is likely going to go, he doesn't really want to rest the opponent's characters and hit into them. Electing to just hit into the opponent's leader, probably with the rest of his dong, since he doesn't have anything great to really play with his characters, or with the cards in his hand. If this kid decides to block with the 4-cost Hawkins on the board, then it does mean that the Green Zoro leader is going to be able to get one more attack at the opponent's life. So it will be a decision of whether or not the kid wants to burn the opponent's life, whether he wants to have the character on the board, or if he wants to just take this life so that he can get the 2-draw 1 trash. I feel like the best thing to do here is to just take the attack. You take the attack, chooses not to use it. Interesting. So what he might do now is just play the 7-cost law and just put it back into his life. Oh no, he does have the 8-cost kid though, so that is also an option. But yeah, choosing not to block with the Hawkins here, just making it a bit harder for the opponent to take out, and slowly going to start building out his board, making it much harder for Zoro to start to push back later on. Yeah, I actually don't know how this matchup goes, but so far, Kid seems like it's very much in the driver's seat. Although now Kid has the option to either play the 8-cost Kid to try to push the game and his agenda a little bit further, or play the 7-cost Law. Looks like he's going for the Law, though. I'm not actually sure which one would have been better here. It seems like he's in a pretty comfortable position right now, so he could elect to use the 8-cost Kid, start getting that leader effect going to start to help him unbrick his hand a little bit, but decides to just play the safer play. Still, the 9,000 power attacker is going to be very annoying to deal with for Zoro. Kid's board slowly but surely getting very, very powerful. Yeah. Very comfortable position for Kid, but we can't... I don't know. The thing is, it's hard to say that this is like confidently Kid winning or confidently Zoro winning, because Kid had an exceptional curve early game and Zoro had a very, very slow start. Didn't find anything to play on 5 Dong, which is almost expected for a deck that has 2 searchers and at minimum 8 cards in the 5-cost Tashigi and the 5-cost Cavendish that you can usually play on this turn. Although, going to try to start fighting back value. Now, he does have to take out the characters on the board. as much as he doesn't want to play into the opponent's on KO effects, he will need to take back the characters or he will just easily get run over.
一応ちょうどミホークからの足し木はできるんですけど、どうでしょう。
He does have Sanji sleeves on his Zoro deck.
いやそうですね。もう KO 時だいぶ回復しちゃいますからね。
So as we saw in game 1, this 8-cost Mihawk is going to basically be a 2-cost 8,000 blocker with the Cavendish next to him. So going to be able to explode onto the board a little bit here. He is actually able to play the 5-cost Sashigi and the 8-cost Mihawk on the same turn. So going to be a pretty powerful turn, but just not really the targets that he wants to see on the board. So though he will have to hit into them at some point if he actually wants to fight that control. He can't actually try to play the aggressive game against Kid because Kid has such a dominant position right now. Okay, and now we have to see how Kid's going to deal with this. Is he going to just take the block? Yeah, it seems like he is. Okay, so Kid... Zoro... he's just going to end up playing the Tashigi, try to take out the Kuma and go for life. This will still leave at Yellow Kid at 4 life after Kuma gets the heal, but will at the very least thin out his board a little bit. Yeah. Oh, and this is a little cheeky, but any value is nice, yeah. I thought that maybe you wouldn't be able to get value out of the rest from Tashigi's effects, but being able to KO that 1-cost Luffy is somewhat significant if he does get to start playing the 1-cost Hiyori again. Just makes it so that Kid may have to force an attack into it with his leader, something that he doesn't really want to. Yeah, now uses the trigger. Pretty nice playing, likely just going to get rid of... Ooh, wants to hold on to the 7-cost Law. I guess the longer that the game goes on, the better that it is for Kid. But he does need to start being careful about how he defends these attacks. Zoro can hit into the same character if that character is 7-cost or higher. So this 7-cost Law, this 8-cost Kid on the board, if he doesn't have enough cards in his hand to defend them, Zoro could play a slower game and just try to whittle away at his board. So the Kid... the way that Kid likes to play his game, just burning the opponent's life as quickly as possible to put in pressure while making it very difficult for the opponent to find an angle back into the game. If Zoro at this position was still at something like 2 life, then he'd be in a comfortable spot to try to take back the board. But all of the characters resting and one of them becoming a blocker in the next turn makes it so it's going to be pretty difficult for Zoro to find the aggressive angle or try to take back the board. And Kid, 7 cards in hand and 3 2Ks in his hand. Another one being a blocker. And they said that if he does decide to go for a defensive plan at the flip of the switch, can easily do so. Zoro getting rid of one of his aggressive tools in that 3-cost event, Luffy will become King of the Pirates. He does have another one in his hand, it just means that he won't be able to do the triple 9K attack. This is a really nice 5K. 5K is going to have to force a 2K out of his hand, which gives Kid a lot of information. It's likely just going to be Kid winning in the next coming turn. Because he will be able to survive on this turn, but he will not be able to take back 8-cost Kid's board no matter how hard he tries, because not only is this 2-cost Bitchy now coming onto the board, but one of the characters is going to be able to restand thanks to Kid's leader effect. So minimum, he is probably going to have 1 character on the board and his leader at the very worst. And if Zoro doesn't find a blocker in the next turn, if Zoro doesn't find a way to deal with this, then it might be hard. But Hody, I don't think it's enough, but Hody would be the only card that gives Zoro a chance. I think that he's likely just forced to go for lethal now. Yeah, no, I think no matter what, Zoro loses the next turn, so he does have to just try to go for a optimistic lethal with this 7-cost Hody. Cody can rest the 8-Cus Kid and the 2-Cus Bitchy, which are both blockers currently. And so with the amount of counter, we got another 2K too? Maybe that was blocked by another count, or hidden by another card in his hand. Yellow Kid has so much counter in his hand right now that with all these attacks coming in, he's still probably feeling very comfortable. He needs all of these attacks to go through, essentially. In the 7K, he does have enough counter to defend it, but he may choose to take it just to force the opponent to use more counter. One of the dangers of defending this 7K here is that the opponent can make their attacks smaller, whether it's 6K with the Zoro or even 5K with the Pirona, to try to play around the fact that the opponent may not have any more counter in their hand. Oh, not playing around it though, going for 7K. I think that means that it's just game though. Oh, he does have his leader effect, or not leader effect, the 3-Cust event. So he's going to hit for 7-8-8-7, or not 7-7-8-8 if he orders it correctly, but he does have enough counter regardless. Knew that the 1K was coming to hand, you just need to hope that in the last 3 cards there wouldn't be enough counter. Yeah, and Zoro had a very good top deck, tried his best, but unfortunately just doesn't have enough, just passes the turn out of respect, letting the game end pretty quickly. Because, oh, actually know this guy. I've fought him in unofficial tournaments before. Should have recognized his face. Yeah, very dominant showing from Kid. Green Zoro did, though, get a bit of a slow start in the early game, which did hurt him in the long run. If he did find a 5-Cust on that 5-Dong turn, maybe he'd have that one extra bit of damage to be able to end out the game on this turn, forcing Yellow Kid to play out the mid-game a bit stronger. Or maybe play out the mid-game a bit safer, but that's not going to be today. At the very least, that means that we get OP13, hopefully, spoilers faster. Still very dominant game from Kid. That means that we do have a Yellow Kid in the top 4 again. This deck has such a low play rate, but I think it's so powerful. Did I beat him? I don't remember what I was playing. I just remember his face. I think he was really nice to talk to, though. That's why I remember him. I mean, like, he just looks wholesome, doesn't he? I don't remember. I think around that time I was playing Red Purple Luffy, and that probably means that I lost. But I was actually winning a decent amount with Red Purple Luffy, so maybe not as bad. But he's a very, very strong player. Yeah, I was about to go to my trios, but we should wait a little bit. Let's see if we get... I should have blocked the Kuma swing with Mihawk. Let's see. This is on the last turn? Probably the turn before that. 7K here. He takes the free block. He has to defend. He takes... I think this... Can this loss still attack? I can't remember if he played it on this turn. Oh yeah, he did, because he played the 8-Cus Kid this turn. 7 free block. I think it's a bit iffy. I think regardless, you're in a bad spot here. I think the way that he played it out was still relatively clean. You just use the 0-Cost event and then the next attack. Nah, but I mean, just everything you do here feels pretty bad. But what would actually be the better play? 7 free block. 9 can become 11. Does 11 just go through? Because the thing is, you have to go into the blocker phase before you use your counter events. So you can't do something like Paradise Waterfall and then block. You would have to block and then Paradise Waterfall. Oh shit, sorry guys. Yellow Bonnie. Oh, I was actually right on this coloring. So, okay. Yellow Bonnie, 5,000 power, 5 life. First normal leader that we have. Egghead and Bonnie, pirates typing. On your turn, once per turn. When you play a character that has a trigger, this effect activates. Attach 2 rested dong to a leader or character. It's pretty good. I can't remember. I think that the issue is that there's a lot of egghead cards that your leader needs to be Vegapunk to use, not necessarily egghead. Like, see, this is like, if your leader's a Vegapunk, play the card. If your leader's a Vegapunk, play the card. I need to see, at least this one's if your leader's egghead, but you don't really want to play that to board. It's a nice simple effect, but it doesn't shock me in the way that something like Subble did. Are there any solid cards here? Nami's nice, but that's not necessarily like egghead locked. Being able to get the Dong onto your Bonnie is nice. That's definitely something. Yeah, it's not bad. I'll say that, but it's a bit tricky to really rate it. We do need to see a bit more cards. We only get one leader? No.
第13弾の受け継がれる意思の情報をお届けいたします。続いての対戦まで少々お待ちください。
Okay, that theoretically then leaves Roger and Ima, which we can hope, and it's probably likely, right? Because this is going to be the final Japanese championship for Wave 1, that we're going to get Ima and Roger after the top 4 match. Oh yeah, works well with Onami. That is something, yeah. Seraphim cards. Thing is, like, these aren't leader locked to Egghead, and other yellow leaders aren't necessarily using them. I think that, like, I mean, this is a really powerful card that I think could definitely be used. Some of the other ones do feel a bit lackluster, but this Bonnie's nice. What is this? I've never seen this art before. I think it's interesting. I'm more excited for what that might mean for Vegapunk buffs, because if we get powerful Egghead characters, that buffs up Vegapunk for sure. Oh, what? No mic sound? Hold on. I think it's fine. Yeah. I think that... Yeah, okay, it's fine. Egghead, so far, doesn't seem like there's anything too much. Trying to see if there's any other generically good yellow cards. I think it's like most of the top end cards don't have trigger. It's a really inefficient way to look at it, isn't it? Kikonojo is nice, yeah. The thing is, like, I think the rush characters that exist in yellow, you know, all of these cards, none of them, I guess this one does, have trigger, which is the first thing that would come to mind as something that would be powerful with Bonnie. Maybe we'll get Egghead Rush character, which is something that Vegapunk has always really wanted, at the very least. Anything else? Ikabura. For now, I'm not sure. I guess just generic kind of aggro-y yellow deck. It's probably not bad, but I think it'll really come down to the sport. Get back to this. We only have a couple left. Oh, we have a lot of really weird leaders left. Talk about Roshinante, because I think Roshinante is not bad. Roshinanteはね、どうしよう。Roshinante can play your laws for 2 cost cheaper, which sounds really good, but because it's Dom -1, it kind of only acts as 1 cost cheaper. And the laws, all kind of because they weren't created for this deck, feel a bit awkward together. There's the 7 cost law in OP12, which is pretty powerful, and if you can swarm your board with a bunch of laws and play that 7 cost law, it makes your leader 6,000 power and your entire board plus 1,000 power. So it is quite powerful if you can get that going. It's also very hard to take purple-yellow Roshinante's board. So if you go against decks that want to take back your board, it's one of the better leaders against removal. So like it would be better against something like Lucci. It's pretty solid against someone like Zoro, for example, but or like at least like on paper the way that the leader effect works. But in practice, what actually ends up happening is that because you have to take your life to defend your characters, you end up dying very quickly if the opponent goes for your life, and your board largely comes down to just what you can draw, since although you do have ways to search for the laws in your deck, sometimes it feels like you're at the mercy of the draw, because like things like the forecast promo law that is blocker that ramps you one dong, those sorts of cards feel instrumental to actually getting an early proper start as this deck. So if you don't find those cards, the deck feels a lot weaker, but if you do, I think the deck is pretty solid. Still though, the deck has a lot of awkwardness to it, so I'm going to put it comfortably with the rest of the OP12 leaders. Not to say that these leaders are necessarily bad, but just that they need a certain meta for them to really thrive, and right now, with the way that the top of the meta has been sort of shaping up, it's been difficult for them to really find their niche. Let's talk about Red Shanks. Oh, no, it's gone, so we don't have to talk about Red Shanks. Let's talk about Black Lucci. Black Lucci has come down a little bit. I'm just kidding. I'll put Shanks back in here, but there isn't too much to say about him. Black Lucci as a deck has been omnipresent. He's always been in the meta. He's always been something you have to kind of deal with. But thankfully, with the start decks, as I'm sure that you guys in the West know much better than I do, Teach and Buggy both really destroy Lucci, and both these decks, although relatively small in terms of play rate, have still been factors that you do have to consider. People are afraid of hitting into Teach in Japan because Teach is a very beloved deck historically. But he doesn't do bad into Blue Purple Luffy. He does do badly into Green Purple Luffy. And Red Rayleigh, I would need to test that a bit more, but Red Rayleigh is a bit similar to Red Zoro, so I would imagine it's kind of similar. I don't necessarily think that Lucci is a bad deck, but similar to these leaders that we were just talking about, it does kind of have more bad matchups in the meta now with these new start deck cards. So let's put him around here-ish. I'll put him below the Zoro Sanji, just because I think people would prefer to see Zoro Sanji higher in the list. Kobe. I'm not going to end up putting Kobe on the list because I just don't have enough testing on him. He could actually be powerful, and I just wouldn't know. I only played a couple of games with Kobe, and he was fun to play, but just had a really, really bad Blue Purple Luffy matchup. I think that if Blue Purple Luffy as a deck disappears from the meta, then he can see a lot more play. He does seem to be also getting some buffs in PRB, so we'll see how powerful that is, but in the current meta, I just haven't seen him at all, unfortunately. Yeah. Put Marco in here. Sounds like we're getting back into the up 4. We get fun. Oof. Every week we have one of every single different deck. We have one Blue Purple Luffy, one Green Zoro, one Red Green Smoker, and one Yellow Kid. Interesting. Blue Purple Luffy, always the top share at the start of Top Cut, but slowly gets chipped away at. I think a very similar thing happened last week, where we had one Green Zoro, one Blue Purple Luffy, and then randomly a blue-green Zoro Sanji, and then a green-yellow Law, with green-yellow Law taking it in the end. Although, we do have a couple of new faces this time, but finally, yes! I mean, I guess for you guys know, but a deck that I can commentate on. Okay, this is my wheelhouse. I can talk about this deck in a lot more depth than I can about something like Yellow Kid. Reiju, I don't have enough information on as a deck to really rate her, but I think she could be solid. Lim as a deck has a terrible Blue Purple Luffy matchup, but does well into the other decks, so I can see her being decent if you could just dodge this deck. But yeah, it's just a big if, basically. Okay, Red Green Smoker. This matchup's not easy. If Blue Purple Luffy can go first and really mess up Smoker's plan, then it's playable. But if Smoker can get off the 5-cost Smoker into the 3-cost Tashigi, then it can be very difficult to bounce back because things like God Thread are offline effectively. Things like 9 Mom are much harder to use. It's really this 3-cost Tashigi that's going to be a pivotal factor in this matchup. And it looks like Red Green Smoker wins the rock paper scissors, which is, by the way, how we choose who goes first and second in Japan because it's a very fair system, can't be exploited, and chooses to go first. So Blue Purple Luffy already at a bit of a little bit behind, but oh, I should do I totally forgot I want to do this chat interaction. Obviously, I want green purple or green purple, red green Smoker to win, but I'm curious what you guys want to win.
5コストスモーカー3次スモーカー4Dそれができたらもう357決めたいと
Okay, poll has been started. And while you're clicking on the poll, make sure to click subscribe and like, because it makes me feel happy. I imagine this is going to be a bit of a sweep for Smoker, but we'll see how many Blue Purple Luffy faithfuls are here. Blue Purple Luffy has not won an OP12 championship yet, despite being so present in the Top Cut. So, if Blue Purple Luffy loses here, it's going to be the end of Blue Purple Luffy in OP12 championships. This is playable. He has the 3-cost Tashigi, which is harder to find. This Tashigi is only Punk Hazard, so it would only be searchable off of the Virgo. But isn't Slash despite having a sword just because of how the Punk Hazard arc worked out. So, if this Red Green Smoker can find the 5-cost Smoker though, which seems rather likely with the amount of searches that he has in his hand, all being able to find this 5-cost Smoker, then I think that he will be able to find a very powerful and comfortable start in the early game. Ooh. We do not see Is to Die for that much recently in Blue Purple Luffy. This hand, not the best for Blue Purple Luffy if he's going second. If you're going second, you would have preferred to have something like Bonkley into the God Thread. But still though, if he can find a way to deal with this 3-cost Tashigi, then he may be able to stabilize because he does have a lot of tools to be able to remove the opponent's board and slowly win back the game. This matchup isn't too bad, it is just very dice dependent. I think it's like close to 50-50, but the side that's going first does have a slight edge. Okay. It also largely comes down to if Smoker can find his pieces in the early game, which it seems like he's well poised to. Puts down the Piddle on the first. I don't know what you'd necessarily be looking for between the two different searchers. But first search doesn't see it, and importantly is bottoming 2 Hodies. Bottoming 2 Hodies and the 4-cost Small Pistol does mean that it's going to be a bit tricky to get rid of this 8-cost category later on in the game. But still though, just need to be calm, see what ends up happening here. Blue Purple Luffy, don't see what he drew. 8-cost category. Not really what you want to see in this early game. Generally, as Blue Purple Luffy, you just want to see counter in the early game and find your top end with your leader effect. So, another option for Blue Purple Luffy, if he had it, would be to just slam down the 4-cost Splitting, which is why I think it's so powerful. Doesn't see the 5-cost Smoker still. So if he doesn't see it on the next search, he may actually be in a bad spot. Yeah. Oh, and since the casters are talking about this, the reason why this card's played is because it's Punk Hazard and Slash, which is just randomly one of those cards that's double searchable off of both Virgo and Perona. He doesn't actually play the second half of it, it's just a double searchable 2000 counter. He doesn't see it! Wait, Blue Purple Luffy has a massive way to fight this game now. Smoker, after 3 searches, doesn't see the 5-cost Smoker. This is really, really bad. He does have 1 more draw, potentially 2, if Blue Purple Luffy hits his life on the next turn. Ooh. One thing that Blue Purple Luffy can choose to do here is nothing. if Blue Purple Luffy wants to play the slower game, he can just not hit Smoker here and just pass the turn. And the reason why you wouldn't even want to play the Forecast Bongle here is because if Smoker decides to play a 6,000 power or higher, which he's likely going to, given the fact that you've seen three, it seems like he's just going to play it. But you could just not play the Smoker, or not play the Bongle here and wait for the opponent to play Smoker. Then once the opponent plays Smoker, you just play It's to Die For, and then you get the free ramp, and you don't have to use this 1k counter, which could potentially be more valuable than the actual body on the board. But regardless, Smoker doesn't find the 5-cost Smoker here. The nice thing that, if it was me as Blue Purple Luffy, I probably wouldn't have played the Bongle there if I had It's to Die For in hand, since you can still play both next turn if he decides not to. But yeah, Blue Purple Luffy now getting the news that Smoker doesn't have the 5-cost after all of that. So, ends up getting the right play, but still very, very unlikely for Smoker to just not have it. This is essentially like 3 mulligans, and he just couldn't find it. Plays the Chopper, which is still going to be 7,000 power blocker on the opponent's turn, so very powerful, but this is going to be rough for Smoker. Now it's looking really bad for Smoker, I think. It's one of the things that I don't really like about It's to Die For is that on these turns, it's very awkward to just play It's to Die For and pass. So now he's going to get the active Dong. Oh yeah, and because the Chopper on the board is 6,000 power or higher, he does get the double ramp, so he didn't actually need to play this Bongle regardless. But, I mean, I guess valuing the attacker. Maybe looking to attack here now because he has so much extra Dong, but there is the potential that he just passes once again. Seems like he's considering the Red Rock, but I think that it's better to just pass. Yeah, decides to pass the turn, plays slower. If this was God Thread, on the other hand, it would have put him in a much better spot, but I'm curious why he decides to run It's to Die For. I used to run It's to Die For when I was playing the more aggressive version of Blue Purple Luffy, but with the way that he's playing, it seems like he's still trying to play for that control plan, still trying to play out the slower late game, and generally the card that helps the most with that in the early game is going to be that God Thread. Yeah, not Smoker. Can't tell what's in his hand. Might be. Yeah, it seems like he picked up the Smoker finally, one turn late after looking through about 17, 18 cards in his deck. And will finally do what he wanted to do the turn before. Still, maybe able to stabilize, but that one turn that he lost from not being able to play the Smoker the turn before, not being able to get his leader effect the turn before that, is going to hurt him quite a bit, I feel. Luffy is passing because if Luffy hits into the opponent's leader and gives the opponent a lot of cards, it does two things. One, it gives him more resources to defend his board, which makes it harder for Blue Purple Luffy to actually play the slower game and actually win back the board over time. And two, it gives the opponent more opportunities to find the 5-cost Smoker. He has intel that the opponent doesn't have 5-cost Smoker the turn before, so if he doesn't hit into it, then the opponent would need to top deck it. Luckily, he does in this situation, but if you hit into the opponent's leader, you give them more opportunities to draw into it, and then if they find the cards that they're looking for, then that does a lot more damage than if you were to just get that one extra bit of damage onto the opponent's leader. Still though, I don't know what he picked up from his leader effect because I was explaining that, that's my bad. But potentially not looking to use this 9-cost Sanji quite yet, because he does have a lot of top end on his hand. With the slower version of Blue Purple Luffy, you do just want to starve out Smoker. And you can learn about that more, because I have a guide in the description below. Sorry, not to sell out a little bit, but I worked hard on that guide, and I'm going to be updating it for OP12 pretty soon. Probably, if I get time, I'll upload it tomorrow, but just see how tired I am, since I'm going to be doing some video editing tonight too. And now, Luffy probably just wanting to, yeah. He's playing the 9-cost Mom here does feel like it's rather low value. If you play the Katakuri, it will gain some value over time. So I don't hate the 9-cost Mom either, just to get rid of the opponent's Tashigi. Yes, if the opponent has another one, they could just play another one. But creating more opportunities and more space for a 9-cost Mom will be really nice in the long run. And this Katakuri is just generally decent, but doesn't actually make a huge difference in the long run. This 8,000 power attack from Smoker can easily be defended with Gear Second, but does he choose to? He doesn't really have great ways to counter out of his hand with like 1Ks or 2Ks, so he will just likely do that. Yeah, and with the 8 dong left, Smoker is going to play out the 8-cost Mihawk. With on-play effect, leader effect, and Smoker's effect, going to get back 7 dong, making this a 1-cost 8,000 power blocker for Smoker. Thankfully, he can't play another character given his board, but if he can hit in a way that makes the 8-cost Katakuri rested, then he can potentially just take out the character immediately with the mole pistol. Okay, blocks now. So now, maybe, yeah, just going to use the mole pistol. Yeah, this is devastating. Oof. You really don't want to play the 4-cost Bunkley on that turn if you're planning to double ramp with It's to Die For. It's a very niche thing because you have to run It's to Die For that to actually be a thing. But now, this Katakuri, significantly reduced in the amount of power that it has, and also losing the attacker in the 4-cost Bunkley. Is Smoker going to go for the second attack? I believe that the mole pistol, I might be wrong. Sorry, I think it's minus 5,000 power, so he can still attach the rest of his dong onto the Virgo and try to take out the Katakuri, but potentially may elect to leave. Oh, he could also. Ooh, this is actually a bit of a tricky decision. Yeah, I think that you just go for the Virgo attack, and actually, this is going to go through. Big hand read. If he rested that Tashigi there, there's potential for Luffy to try to take it out by some means and try to win back the board with the 9-cost Mom. But not resting that Tashigi, leaving it also securely behind the 8-cost Mihawk is going to make it very tricky to take out the board. Luffy getting back his board, probably resting at a timing that he shouldn't have, is going to make it so that he has no board going into his second 10-dong turn. I think he countered too, or he blocked too early. If he waited for one more attack to block, then then the red-green Smoker wouldn't have an easy, I guess, means of taking out the 8-cost kid, even if he used the mole pistol. So I think this is a bit of a tricky spot for Blue Purple Luffy. He did make a bit of a misplay on that spot. Should have held on for a little bit longer since he does have that 9 Mom in hand. He shouldn't be too afraid of going down too low in life. But Blue Purple Luffy, maybe not playing the matchup too much, not playing around the mole pistol. Did he? I didn't see any very decent target for 9-cost Sanji. Perhaps he's just going to play a card raw and hope to find a decent 9 Sanji target the next turn. The issue with that is that 9 Sanji gets harder and harder to play as the game goes on. It wasn't a Virgo. He's likely probably just going to let that through. Yeah, I guess there isn't really any other target. Chopper is 7,000 power on the opponent's turn thanks to Smoker's leader effect. Smoker is also 8,000 power. So if he doesn't want to hit the opponent's leader, then that's basically the only thing he can do. It's 5-cost Nami though. Very, very slow. I'm not even sure if I would have wanted to do this over one of the other characters in hand. Still though, picks up a fair bit of counter. Will be able to defend some of the earlier attacks. Does he have Gear Second in his hand still? I believe he has one. Yeah, okay, that's Gear Second. Yeah, so this Gear Second will at least mitigate the 5-cost Spanish Smoker's pressure, but Blue Purple Luffy's board not very powerful. With my deck list, I would not starve them. I would just hit them and try to putting them right before they want to play the 5-cost Smoker and hope that they just don't draw the 5-cost Smoker. Ooh, attaching 4 dong, hitting for 11,000 into Luffy. Now this makes it very tricky. He can't... He could, if he had it, use Gum Gum Giant to try to defend it and use a 2k, but he is going to force out a block because he doesn't want to lose that last life. If he was willing to lose that last life, he would have just taken it the turn before. But now, with the attacks on board, Smoker though, what does he have in hand? It seems like he has a lot of defensive tools. He does have another Smoker though, so he may just play that. That may just be the best play. Play the Smoker, you get 3 dong back from your leader effect as well as one of the Smokers, and just leave up a ton of dong for your events. He's in a pretty secure spot right now to rest this 8-cost Katagiri. 8-cost Yak. Yep. And that's exactly what's going to happen. So now Blue Purple Luffy will get to keep one of the characters on his board, which he would have wanted the turn before. But this is where he will start to try to fight back if he can. But again, doesn't really see good cards. Most people with this version of Blue Purple Luffy generally only run one... I got a message. Most versions of Blue Purple Luffy currently only tend to run one copy of this 4-cost pudding. So seeing it here and not in the early game where he maybe would have wanted a bit more, but potentially not the game plan, sends it to the bottom, saying that he probably just doesn't really need it for the rest of the game. Now, he will have to play with the cards that he has in hand. This 3-cost Tashigi is gaining a lot of value, like we said it will. But now, does he choose to play the 9-cost Mom, or does he choose to play the 8-cost Katagiri? If you play the 9-cost Bomb to just get rid of the opponent's Tashigi so that you can more easily affect the opponent's board later on, you do have a higher likelihood of finding a 9-cost Bomb soon because you haven't seen one from your leader effect yet. If you play the 8-cost Katagiri, you may be able to survive a bit safer until you get to that point, but I feel like playing the 9-cost Bomb here, although it feels really bad to do so, seems like it would be the better play in the longer term so you can actually start to get rid of the opponent's board. Yeah. Yeah. And the Paradise Waterfall, being able to restand the Smoker now makes it so that Luffy, if he wanted to, won't be able to attack into this character now. Smoker sitting in a position where he really wants Blue Purple Luffy to want to go into his life, but Blue Purple Luffy, now with Red Green Smoker with only 3 cards left in hand, is slowly getting to the point where he might be able to start to chip away at this board. Does play the 9 Mom. This is one of the other reasons why you do want to starve this matchup, because he's likely going to send this Tashigi. Yeah. You send the Tashigi to the bottom of their life, and because you're not only giving back the opponent 1 life, but you're also giving them a 2k counter, it makes it really hard to actually push over the opponent if you're playing an honest, slower game. Smoker not finding the late game piece that he wants, but his board is really powerful, so it's likely going to be that he just spreads out his dong on his characters and tries his best. Yeah, no thinking, just going straight for the attack. I think honestly this is very small, but if you thought about it a little bit more, that's one of the 9 Moms that we hadn't seen yet. It is going to... Ooh, takes both banishes. 8 kata. The casters are freaking out about this, but I don't think that losing the 8 kata is that hard. It's just losing the attacks, or losing the cards in hand as fuel for Gum Gum Giant. That's going to be a bit more tricky to deal with. Still though, Blue Purple Luffy now finally in a spot where he is against... Oh my god, he's still... Jesus Christ, this is so bad. But wait. How helpful is the Gravity Blade right now? I think Gravity Blade could be really good right now. But he might not actually run Gum Gum Giant. We still haven't seen it after all of these searches. This may be salvageable. Like, if he had 1 Giant, I think this game would be completely salvageable, which is very scary. Did... Everyone hates Blue Purple Luffy in chat. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I'll play something, I'll play Roger for you guys next set. I really want to see the board state. I think that there's 2 5-cost Smokers on the board, so he can just Gravity Blade those 2, try his best to survive the next turn, but the fact that he doesn't have a blocker on the board means that without Gum Gum Giant, it's probably just not going to be enough. He likely just dies next turn. So he decides to send to the bottom, maybe looking for a 9-mom. There's his Gum Gum Giant. He probably doesn't play the card at four copies for him to not see it until now, but yeah, no, it wouldn't have been enough even if he kept that Gravity Blade. And this Smoker is 8,000 power on the opponent's turn, so with this single Paradise Waterfall, he will be able to defend the attack. Yeah. And now having another blocker on the board means that it's very unlikely for... I wonder if you really want to be defending Smoker this hard when the opponent's at 0 life now, though. But still, not a huge issue when the opponent has this much counter in his hand. Though he wasn't drawing characters to play onto the board, he is drawing lots of counter, so it's going to be very difficult. Super Luffy passing back the turn. Does have a Gum Gum Giant, so he may be able to survive for a little bit, but I think that if Smoker attacks in the right order, he should be able to have this thing. Oh my god, dude. It's so cringe, man. I mean, it's hype. It's hype, but like, how many times have we seen Hody being top decked, man? It's so over. Yeah. Well, I mean, good game from Smoker. I think if he didn't have that, how would it have been? Hold on. Let's say he doesn't have this. He has 10 dong. Let me grab my dong cards. We'll play a bit of a what if scenario. Let's say he just drew another 2k, not a card that you can actually play onto the board. So he can hit 8, 8. Mm, 8. And wonder, do you start 9 or do you start 8? Maybe he's at 0 life, so you probably just go 9, 9, 9, 10. 9 gets gianted. Don't know what cards he would draw. 9 gets blocked. 9. He likely has it. I don't think that there's a way for Blue Purple Luke to survive, even if he had, even if the Smoker didn't have Hody. Yeah. Okay. Now let's see if we get any new cards. Are we hoping that Roger's good, or are we hoping that Roger's bad? I think that generally Roger, this thing is 7,000 base power, sounds so oppressive. There it is. Okay. 7,000 power, 5 life leader. Red, purple, gold D Roger. 自分の場のドンがある場合。自分の場の Sorry, this is like new wording. I'm trying to understand it. 自分の場のドンがある場合。自分のドンフェーズで置かれるドン1枚を。So, if I'm sorry if I'm getting this wrong because it's very weirdly worded. If you have dong on your dong field, then when you go into your dong phase, you attach a dong to your leader. And if you have 9 or less dong on your field, then your leader gets minus 2,000 power. So once you reach, I guess that makes sense. So once you reach 9 dong or higher, you become a 7,000 power leader. Until then, you're a 5,000 power leader with 5 life. And one of the dong has to go onto your leader. So yeah, so I think that's how that works. If you have dong 2 attached to your leader, you must attach 1 to your leader at the start of your turn, basically. And if you have 9 or less dong, so you have to have 10 dong. You need to have 10 dong for your leader to become 7,000 power. So basically, you just can't minus your dong by 2 once you reach... Oh no, you can't minus your dong at all, I guess. Yeah, because if you go to 9 or less, your leader becomes 7,000 power. Or 5,000 power. So I guess you ramp really hard to 10, and you just stay 7,000 power for the rest of the turn, or rest of the game.
マイナス2000。
Yeah, you can't play a 10 cost. It's just really confusing. You must attach a Don card, so you can't play a 10 cost, but you're trying to reach 10 as fast as possible. But the weird thing is it says, like if it says if you have Dong on your Dong, on your field, so like that means that there are timings where you don't, which is confusing. I don't know about the timing, because there could be some like weird timing things that you have to consider. Like, if you have all of your Dong attached to characters, then what happens? I don't exactly know how that interaction works, but still seems... It's really just confusing to me. I need to kind of I saw it. Yeah, start of Dong, 0 Dong. Dragonotica, I'm hoping for you to clarify this card for me because it's very confusing to me. But it's an interesting leader. I guess it makes sense why they made it 7,000 power if until the late game you're not 7,000 power. But still though, being a 2-color leader with 5 life is power creepy. See if we get another leader. Okay, it seems like we're back to live though.
そして今後も公式ホームページや公式 X で最新情報を更新予定なのでぜひチェックしてみてください。さらにですね、来週木曜17日の20時公開のワンピカード情報局では13弾の特報映像の公開があるということで新カードもいくつか登場しますということで、もうお二人は直近で確認されて、
実はもう今日実はもう2回目のエモでした。実は
2回目のエモ、
一度エモはありました。
そうですね。まあまあ
まあ、ちょっと本当直近取らせていただいて、2度エモ、今日2度目のエモ、2回浴びてもまだエモかった。まだエモ。
十分驚けるような内容だったってことですね。
すごいですよ。診断はやっぱ興奮しますね。はい、お楽しみに。
皆さんもぜひ楽しみにしていてください。このチャンネルでねご覧になれますのでお願いいたします。
Yeah, it seems like they're not revealing the last leader. Yeah, maybe Julie's right, maybe we're not getting Emu leader, but so far the leaks have been 100% correct. Yeah, he is in the anime though, or she. Maybe not. I don't know if that's like been confirmed, I'm not exactly sure. But we'll have to see. So the leaks have been correct up until now. So it seems like they're holding on to that leader for something. At the end? They've never done reveals at the end of the stream, but it's possible maybe. Let's hope. So I missed the announcement of what the last 2 leaders are going to be, so I'll be just as hyped as you guys are. We know at the very least that one of them is going to be Smoker. So Smoker against either Yellow Kid or Green Zoro. So this officially confirms that in all of the OP12 championships we did not have a single blue-purple Luffy win despite it being so dominant. Yeah. Anyways, let's quickly finish this out since we're so close. Nami, I think it struggles a little bit into blue-purple Luffy, struggles a little bit into green-purple Luffy, but does pretty well into a lot of the other leaders across the board since it's pretty anti-aggro, pretty powerful into slower decks thanks to the new 7-cost Olden. Without the start decks, it's pretty bad, but with the start deck, I think it's like pretty strong. I'd put it probably around like here-ish personally, maybe a little bit higher. And red blue Marco is another one of those interesting sort of control red decks. We don't see that many red control decks, but Marco is not very bad at all. Does pretty well into blue-purple Luffy. I don't know how well the green-purple Luffy matchup goes. Surprisingly doesn't do too bad into some of these other matchups thanks to the way that red control works compared to green or black control. It's just I haven't seen too much of this deck, but I did see at the Chinoi's Cup Marco that ended up winning also won another tournament in OP11 after that. So I think there is something there, but I can't really comment on it too much. I'll put it around here, just kind of safely in the middle, but
こちらのお二人ですね。
yeah.
さあ、森ゾロということになっております。先ほどもね、言いましたけれども。
Anyways, oops, my bad. This is basically how I'd tier list the leaders right now in the meta. There's a lot of leaders talk about not too much that we could say about some of them, too much that we could say about others, but this may obviously end up changing, but this is kind of how I feel about the meta going into, maybe this goes down here, but this is like very much on the line. So I think that basically if you play anything on this list from like C and higher, you're in a totally fine spot. I wouldn't recommend playing something that's D or lower personally, but yeah, let's get into the championship. Red Green Smoker against Green Zoro.
対するはこちらの赤緑スモーカーです。パワー5000、ライフ4と。
はい、お願いします。ありがとうございます。
相手のターン中、先ほどもね、これが発揮されましたけれども、特徴海軍がパンカーザードを持つキャラ全てをパワープラス1000と。
Oh yeah, Roger may have things that detach Dong. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, so he's kind of playing one Dong behind permanently since he can't use them to play his characters. He can't play 10 costs, so he can't play things like the 10 cost Shanks. And once he reaches 10 Dong though, assuming that he doesn't minus his Dong on the opponent's turn, for example, though he can't use Gum Giant anyways, but like he can't use, for example, 9 Mom very effectively if that card still exists, though he can use it in tandem with things like Akas Hadagari. We'll see how the deck ends up running. But the deck, very unique, very interesting. Once it reaches the late game, being a 7,000 power leader is going to be very scary. Yeah, wait. There must be a way to detach your Dong. Otherwise, that 10 cost Roger is a big question mark. But I guess it's not the first time they've done that, since they made 8 cost Rayleigh and 5 cost Rayleigh both unusable in the Rayleigh deck since they're both 5 cost or higher. Okay. This feels very reminiscent of the other hands that he's had so far, just tons of searchers and not necessarily the cards that he wants. Still, he was able to stabilize last game from that really bad start with the 5 cost smokers.
で今までの対面は結構その取りにくい、そのキャラ取りにくいリーダーばっかりだったので、そこまで問題にはなってなかったんですけど、この対面においてはその7000のキャラがすぐ叩き潰す可能性が高いんですよね。
See a lot of people clicking in chat, which I'm trying to follow along as I'm looking at this game, but you guys keep at that and let me know how it goes in the after, and let me know if Roger's gonna be top tier or not. Right now my sights are on Subble. Oof. Green Zoro's hand is pretty exceptional. If he's going second, basically his first 4 turns are laid out for him. I don't know who actually ended up going first or second here, but regardless of if he's going first or second, this is going to be a very powerful curve for Zoro compared to Smoker, who just has a lot of bits and pieces, but not necessarily the parts that they really want to find in the early game. Zoro is going to be going second though, so we'll be able to easily answer anything that's played in this early game. We'll see how Smoker plays around it though. Indrith like. If you guys wouldn't mind, it helps me out if you like the stream. I don't like to sell out too much, but I'd appreciate if you guys do so, and also appreciate if you subscribe if you haven't already. I'll make sure to upload a bit more videos. I've been working on a big project recently. Finds there's at least the 3 cost Tashigi, but doesn't see the 5 cost Smoker. Bill picks up the Tashigi, likely isn't going to play it next turn since he does want to play around the 4 cost Kleina that could potentially come out. The nice thing about Smoker is that he doesn't need to play it a turn before since he can just leader effect and the 5 cost Smoker effect to just immediately get them both out, but that does mean that he does need to find that 5 cost Smoker relatively soon. Bill finds one of the pieces he's looking for, potentially going to be able to find the 5 cost Smoker in the next turn with the Perona in his hand, and that search is going to dictate a lot of how this game is going to go.
強いんですけど、相手が結構サーチの2000のキャラが並んでるので、まあ並ぶので、そういったキャラは結構
You guys in the chat are having the exact same reaction. Like, what does the first sentence really mean with Roger's effect? I think, like, basically it means that at the start of your turn, you attach a dong to your leader, with the exception of the very first turn, I would imagine, but it is worded very complicated in a way that probably means that there's going to be cards that interact with that specific timing, or cards that can unattach dong during your turn. Okay, this Pirona, what's it going to show? He doesn't find it, dude. He's so unlucky, but he made it to the finals, so he can't really complain, but he can't find this 5-cost smoker to save his life. Plays the Shirataki.
そこ前になりそうなボニーも2枚も下に行っちゃいましたね。
ポスト帯で出したいカードが見えて引けてない状況ですが、
I am back.
ここ返していきたいですね。でもね。
5点リーダーで。
選手側は
5点リーダー。
Yeah, I'm trying to keep up with all the people theory crafting about Roger at the same time as this. Still, we see Zoro, unlike Blue Purple Luffy, is going to be hitting the opponent's leader. Doesn't seem like he found the 5-cost smoker though from that draw. Will he find it here though? It's off screen. Doesn't look like it's the right card. I think that's a 3-cost Sanji. So now, at the very least though, the 3-cost Sanji will allow him to use his leader effect should he attach a dong to it, because it'll make it 7,000 power. So he could try to find some power on this turn. Likely going to play this pit on to try to find the 5-cost smoker on this next turn. And still doesn't see it, dude. Oh, let me put up the poll.
これまたおそらくバレちゃうっていう。
そうですね。さっき
そう
も
ですよね。同じような。
いやこれは苦しいですね。
そうですね。
でもさっきここからまくってますからね。
そうですよね。
そうですね。まあ一応3時はあるから。
Poll is up. Although we did get a little bit into this game, still want to know which side you guys are rooting for. The OP12 leader of choice, or the hope of OP10, red-green smoker. Yeah. Plays the Sanji, does get, by putting a dong onto it, you get to use your leader effect, so you do kind of cheat one extra dong. So is a decent thing that you can do on these earlier turns if you don't have the 5-cost smoker, but definitely really want to find that smoker early on. Still though, smoker, even if he had it, would be able to be rested by the 5-cost Tashigi that's in Green Zoro's hand currently. So not as pivotal perhaps as it would have been in the Blue Purple Luffy matchup, but we did see that despite not having the 5-cost smoker on that 5-dong turn, not even having this 3-cost Sanji, red-green smoker was able to win out that matchup against Blue Purple Luffy. So we'll have to see how this matchup ends up going. Yeah, no, his luck has expired today, but I mean, still, I mean, I'd be totally happy making it all the way to the finals even if I end up losing it. Yeah. Red-green smoker takes the attack. Can't see what card he ended up picking up, but now at 6 dong, likely just going to play the 5-cost Tashigi regardless of what he has, just to be able to develop that 5-cost 7,000 body and start to be really aggressive towards the smoker leader. Smoker still, you know, living in the past. Only 4-life leader in the face of Roger, who we saw is 5,000 or 7,000 power and 5 life. Is going to be something that Zoro's going to have to deal with, or Smoker's going to have to deal with. Smoker doesn't really want to take these attacks early because he can just get run over very quickly from Zoro's leader effect from the 5-cost Tashigi. Ooh. Uses Dead Man's Game for the plus 3,000 early on. Identifies that it is going to start becoming a brick later on because he has so many counter events in his hand. Yeah, and plays the Tashigi. Very clean curve right now. Going to hit into the Sanji to just get rid of the character and also be able to crack one more life from Smoker. And if Smoker doesn't find something good to play on this next turn, the game might just be over very quickly. It's very rare for a 5,000 power 4-life leader to do well, since as a prerequisite, basically all of those leaders need to have a way of regaining the value that 1 life would give them. 1 life doesn't seem like too much, but it's 1 attack mitigated and also 1 card that you lose. So it's in a way 2 attacks. So decks that have previously thrived, like Green Yellow Law, like Red Green Law, both have ways to recur resources and gain them through the leader effect. But Smoker, just pure aggressive with this version, being able to restand your dong to use in other places. So Smoker doesn't necessarily have the same amount of resources that other leaders have. So if he can't push down the opponent fast, which with the current hand that we see, he really can't, may start to struggle in this game significantly.
はい1本開けますはい大丈夫です切っていくしかないキャラの7000も確保できずという手が何枚ですか手これで9枚ですね
どっか出すかって感じですけど
また寝かされちゃう可能性もありますもんね。カウンターとして2000カウンターとしてほっとくか。
Oh, yeah. I think this is the only play you can go for. Smoker's deck right now is designed to just go full aggression at the opponent's leader. And if he can't find it, if he tries to play slowly around the 4-cost Sanji, what's just going to happen is that Zoro's going to rest it through any of the means that he has in his deck. He not only runs the 4-cost cleanup, but also the 5-cost Hashigi, easily rests the character, hitting into it and the leader, making so that the opponent's blocker would be a non-issue. This Dong attachment onto Virgo feels really bad for everyone involved, but is probably the only way that he has a chance in this game. He needs to try to push the opponent low enough that he can somehow, some way finish the game before Zoro can finish the game. I do think that this is probably the correct play from Red-Green Smoker, but it feels really terrible to do. Green Zoro, though, the 8-cost Mihawk is likely going to just be the play on this turn, unless there's something off to the side that I can't see. Yeah, and this Virgo, I guess, as he just pointed out on stream, is 3000 power thanks to leader effect. So it is going to be a bit tricky to hit into it with the Pirona, so he's probably not going to like to do that. But yeah, the Zoro coming down. Now he may just want to set up the 4-cost Klina, just even if he can't get value out of it on this turn, just leave it as a potential extra 3 dong on the later turns. Can make a lot of explosive damage later on. Pausing, thinking about it. What triggers are in that deck? Red triggers generally don't have that much value. Green triggers... Oh, Mole Pistol. Interesting. And can't get the KO off though. He needs a 6000 power or higher character on his board to get the KO, otherwise he would immediately snap use that on Tashigi. Probably just won't use it. That means... Ooh... No, he uses it just to get rid of the 1 attack from Zoro. Yeah, I guess he doesn't really have the timing to use it. He may have next turn in tandem with the 8-cost Mihawk, but everything right now feels pretty bad for Smoker. He had a really good run up to the finals, but he is struggling very hard right now, and Zoro just drawing perfectly right now.
そのゾロだったらね、そのタッシギだったり、そのボコスのキャビニッシュとかいろいろあるんですけど、
何番手の選択肢みたいなのが、
そうですね。そのボニーとかは採用されてるところは見たんですけど、ただそのボコスのスモーカー、本当に1枚目をかけられない存在ぐらいデッキに対しては大事な存在なので。
なるほど。ペローナでリーダーにルイナでペローナレストそしてドンが3つきます。
Yeah. I don't know if you... Pirona is 2000 power. I don't know if you need to activate the Klina effect though, but I guess Smoker feeling pretty safe right now. You could just leave the Klina active for when the Smoker decides to play something like the 4-cost Chopper later on to just get the extra dong to make your 3-cost Luffy will become King of the Pirates event that much stronger. But Smoker plagued by Kiyamons these last several games. Kiyamon and Paradise Waterfall, both random Wano country, I don't know what it's called in English, events and counter cards that he just keeps drawing instead of the cards that he's really looking for. Plays basically his first relevant character of the game, but doesn't have anything to do with all of the dong that he got back from the effect. Even if he slams all of this dong onto something, he may try to attach a couple of dong to Pirona, hit into the Klina, try to get rid of that, and one more character with all of dong on leader. And with all of this Dong active from Red Green Smoker, Green Zoro doesn't know what's really going to come out, not going to anticipate that all of this Dong is just going to go on to leader, most likely. So we'll probably let the attack through. And then how much does he want to put onto his leader? Probably just leaves 2 for the 2 Paradise Waterfalls to try to stay as best he can in the game. But against Green Zoro, a deck that can just rest your characters at will, hit into them twice if he chooses to, can be pretty difficult. Now, does the attack go into leader or does it go into a character? He's been going aggressively, so if he switches his character plan to going for leaders, it does make it tricky for him to actually close out the game, but he may be forced to hit into characters currently. Zoro, though, afraid of this aggression. I don't know if the attack was going to Tashigi or life, but respecting the amount of damage that can come out of Smoker, decides to counter out the attack. His hand now a little bit more thinner than it was the turn before, so should Smoker be able to survive the next couple of turns, maybe he has an avenue back into it, but this is still a bit of wishful thinking. Zoro, with the 3-cost event in hand, is going to be very, very aggressive on these next coming turns to try to break through. I wonder how he's going to spread out his Dong on this turn. He may just want to, maybe looking to use his leader effect early on. But actually, if this is 8, maybe not. He could go, if he chooses to use the 3-cost event right now, he could go 8-8, 8-9-9 with the effect and 2 hits from his leader. But he may not really need to do that on this turn. He could just attach his Dong onto his characters, potentially play the searchers that he has in his hand to look for a little bit more counter, to play a little bit more safe on this turn. I think that Zoro's not in a spot where he's going to die anytime soon. Maybe slightly afraid of... Oh, yeah, Hody, as I was just about to say. The 7-cost Hody is potentially an avenue back into the game for Smoker, but that still means that he will have to go through all of the remaining life that Zoro has. With the amount of counter that Zoro has in hand, it's likely just guaranteed to be his game. But Smoker does have a slim chance from his perspective back into the game. Smoker, though, he doesn't need to go aggressively here, but maybe trying to force out a block from the Mihawk. Hits with the... Ooh, hits with Mihawk. In a way, this plays around the Hody, since the Hody doesn't actually get value out of resting characters if they're already rested. But yeah, this 8k attack... Hold on. Okay. Oh, it looks like he's going for the 88899. Yeah. So, this attack... Wow, he actually went for it. Which means that now Smoker is going to be forced to just block with the 8-cost Mihawk, and now he has 0 chance. Game is over. Very brave of Zoro to try to go for game in that spot. He didn't necessarily need to, I think, but he has it in the end. Unfortunately, we just saw Red Green Smoker brick really hard on stream, but still, we got to see Red Green Smoker win many of the other games today, so I'm glad that that was able to happen. Yeah. Was it you that called it before? Yeah, it was. Yeah, I saw last life is gonna be 5-cost Smoker, and it was. Yeah, 2 games in a row, wasn't able to find that 5-cost Smoker, but against Blooper Luffy was able to find it the turn after. Unfortunately, in this game, not going to be the case. Yeah. Now, they generally don't show any more cards after this, so I wouldn't expect them to. But we are missing one leader, so like I would like to pray. I think if they go to interviews with the players, then it's likely just not going to happen. So I guess we'll start to wrap up a little bit. How are you guys doing? I'll probably... Oh shoot, I had the poll going on for a long time. That's my bad. Well, Red Green Smoker ended up losing. But lose in the game, but win overall on the day. Was still able to get second place in the final OP12 championship. Yeah, I wish Japan had best of 3, especially in games like that, where just Red Green Smoker bricked. It's the brutality of best of 1. And best of 1 in a system where you only have one chance is really scary, really hard. But up until this point, we have seen Ace, Sabo, Luffy, Bonnie, and Roger. And I think I was looking at chat as that game is going on. People were mentioning that if you start the turn with 10 dong, then you don't likely have to attach the dong onto leader, which would make sense with the way that it was worded. That makes more sense for why it was worded in that way. So potentially that's how that works. But that does mean that you can't minus your dong unless you have something like 8 Katsu Katakuri on the board. So it's going to be interesting to see how that deck actually runs. Anyways, it looks like we might not get any more reveals though. So congratulations. I think this is the first time that Green Zoro finally won a championship despite being ever present in Top Cut. The start decks, let me pop over to my tier list a little bit here. I did put him here. I still think that these leaders are really powerful, but like Green Purple Luffy has been a bit MIA for a little while. Just Green Zoro, if you look at the top of meta, I think that Green Zoro is here. But if you look at the meta as a whole, just like what people tend to bring to tournaments, some people are still coping things like Buggy, some people are still coping things like Purple Black Luffy. And against the start deck leaders that got buffed recently, because in Japan we only got the buffs about 2 weeks ago, people are still hoping that these decks are good. Green Zoro does really well into those decks. So since the start decks have come out, Green Zoro has really come up. But if people logically just brought sort of like higher tier decks, I think that it would be safely here. Still though, he was able to win on this day, so I think Green Zoro is absolutely one of the best decks of OP12. I think that just for me personally, it's a bit too linear. So though, I'm glad that Red Green Smoker was able to have a very good showing today.
ではまずは惜しくも負けてはしまったんですけれども、堂々の準優勝だったライデン選手、率直なお気持ちお聞かせください。
The hair is kind of fucked today, isn't it? What happens when you have headphones on, I guess? I don't have the headphone dent, so it just goes above my head. Yeah. It seems like we're not getting any more reveals, unfortunately. But congratulations to those two. I'm not going to let this drag on for too much longer, just because I need to go eat dinner as well. But I appreciate that you guys all hopped in here to watch the championship with me. It means a lot to me. Subscribe and like if you... Oh shoot, did I have this on the whole time? Oops. Whoops. I completely forgot that I had this piece of text on the screen the entire time. Yellow Kid ended up losing to Green Zoro in the top 4 match. But yeah, I appreciate you guys coming around. I will maybe try to stream a little bit more, although we don't really have many championships to watch. But maybe I'll be around here, talk to you guys, cook up some decks, test some OP12, OP13 when that comes around. But I appreciate you guys coming. Thank you as always. It means a lot to me. It makes it a lot more fun for me to watch these championships with you guys here, since I don't want to talk to myself, because I would totally do that. It also keeps me a bit more tame, since I don't have to yell at my screen, like, why did you play this? Why did you play that? Nah, I kid. I'm not maybe that passionate about the game, but thank you guys for stopping by. I hope you guys have a wonderful morning if you're in Europe. Wonderful, maybe also morning or night, depending on if you woke up or stayed awake if you're in NA or South America. Shout out to Brazil as always, since you guys are always very jubilant in my chat and comments. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. New video should be coming out relatively soon, and another one that should be pretty long right after that. Oh. Yeah, Blue Purple Luffy guide. I'm going to be updating for OP12 pretty soon, and other thoughts. I'll keep updating that for as long as the deck is relevant and I keep playing it. So yeah, check that out in the description below. Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to go eat dinner.